The wall had a way of swallowing sound. Even the wind, which never tired of clawing at the ice, came muted through the thickness of castle black stone. Jon Snow liked the quiet of the Maester's tower for that reason. Quiet made room for thought. Quiet made room for duty. Samwell Tarly had set down a tower of ledgers on the table with the careful reverence of a septon laying a body into the earth. "These are from the Eastwatch stores," he said, already apologizing with his eyes for the inconvenience of learning. "Some are missing their covers. The ink's run on a few." "It doesn't matter," Jon told him, though it did. Everything mattered when you were counting scraps at the edge of the world. He pushed aside a rolled parchment and reached for the next item in Sam's stack, expecting another list of salted fish or iron nails. Instead, his fingers found leather. Old leather, hardened and slick with age. The grain cracked like riverbeds in summer. The folio was bound in a way Jon had never seen in the watch. Not stitched, but folded, the corners tacked with thin copper pins gone green. A black seal held it shut. Ghost lifted his head from the floorboards, ears pricking. The direwolf's pale eyes were fixed on the folio as if it were meat. Jon drew it closer. The wax smelled faintly of smoke and something sharper beneath. Pitch, perhaps, or some resin burned long ago. Pressed into it was a mark that made his throat tighten. A dragon with 3 heads, worn by time but unmistakable. Sam made a small sound. "That can't be." "Maester," Jon said, and looked to the cot by the window. Maester Aemon Targaryen sat wrapped in wool and furs, a thin man inside a too large cloak, hands folded over a blanket. His sightless eyes turned toward Jon, not truly seeing but never quite missing anything that mattered. "What do you hold, Jon Snow?" His voice was as soft as falling snow, yet it reached the table clearly. Jon hesitated. He had grown used to the old man's questions, the way they could make a boy feel suddenly naked. "A book," he said. "Sealed." "A seal," Aemon corrected gently. "What seal?" Jon's thumb traced the cold wax. "A dragon." The quiet changed. It wasn't louder, but it became heavier, as if the tower had taken a breath and held it.
Sam swallowed.
That's the Targaryen sigil." "I know what it is," Aemon said. His blind eyes did not blink. "Bring it closer." Slowly, Jon rose and crossed the room. The boards creaked under his boots. He stopped at the cot and held the folio out. Aemon lifted a hand, thin fingers searching the air until they found the leather. He touched the seal and paused, as though listening through his fingertips. "Dragonstone," the Maester murmured, "or someone who wished to be mistaken for it." Jon frowned. "How can you tell?" "The wax," Aemon said, "and the scent. Those who burn dragonglass often burn other things with it." Sam leaned forward, too curious to keep still. "Can we open it?" Aemon's fingers tightened on the folio. For the first time, Jon saw fear on the old man's face. Not the fear of death, which had long since grown bored of Maester Aemon, but the fear of consequence, the fear of a door once opened. "Lock the door," Aemon said to Samwell Tarly.
Sam blinked.
"Maester, lock it."
Sam hurried to obey.
The bolt slid home with a dull sound that seemed too loud. Aemon turned his face toward Jon. "You found it in the ledgers?" "In the stack," Jon said. "It was tucked between them." "By accident," Sam offered, half a plea. "We weren't looking for—" "No," Aemon said. "You were not." His hand moved to the seal. Aemon's nail scraped wax. The sound made Jon's teeth itch. Aemon stopped, then looked up. Up, though his eyes could not see the ceiling, as if he were addressing something beyond the tower. "There are words," Aemon said, "that do not like to stay buried." Jon felt a foolish flare of anger at the riddle. "Are you saying it's dangerous?" "Everything is dangerous," Aemon replied. "A sword, a crown, a word." He worked the seal loose. The black wax cracked in a spiderweb, then broke clean. Aemon's fingers unfolded the leather cover with surprising care. The folio opened like a mouth. The pages inside were not parchment. They were something smoother, pale and thin, with a faint sheen like bone. The ink had bitten deep, dark strokes that had not faded so much as settled into the page, patient as old blood. Jon expected to see the careful script of maesters or the looping hand of lords. What he saw instead looked like spears and hooks, sharp letters leaning into one another, proud of their angles. The lines were broken into small blocks, each block repeated with slight changes, as if someone had been drilling meaning into the page. Sam exhaled in awe. Old Valyrian. Jon had heard the term like a distant bell, a language from before the Doom, from the Freehold, spoken now only by the highborn of Essos or the Dragon Queen across the sea, if the tales were true. It felt wrong to see it here, in a cold tower at the end of the world. Aemon's hand drifted over the page without touching, like a man warming his fingers over a fire he could not see. "Read," he said. Sam's mouth opened, then shut. I can't. I only know a few phrases. The Citadel doesn't, not unless you're in the higher studies." Aemon turned his blind eyes toward Jon. "You," he said. Jon stared at the jagged script as if it might surrender out of pity. "I don't know it." "Not yet," Aemon said, and the words fell into place with the weight of a command. "But you will." Jon felt Ghost rise behind him. The direwolf padded closer, nails clicking softly. When Jon looked down, Ghost's nose was nearly at the edge of the open folio. Breathing in, breath fogging the page. The animal's ears were forward, intent, as though the letters were a scent. Jon's hand tightened on the leather. "Why me?" Aemon's blind eyes stared past Jon's shoulder. "Because some lessons do not bellin. G in the mouths of men who hunger for power. And because you, Jon Snow, you have always been hungry for duty."
Sam shifted, uneasy.
"Maester, what is it? A spell? A discipline?" Aemon said. "A method? A way of speaking that was made to be heard by fire." Jon's throat dried. "Dragons," he whispered. "Perhaps," Aemon said. "Or perhaps only the memory of them. The world is waking, Jon Snow. Things that should remain asleep are stirring. And when they rise, the living will need more than swords." Jon looked again at the block of text nearest the top. Though he could not read it, he could feel its shape, the way the lines pressed forward. It reminded him absurdly of marching, of men falling into step without thinking. Aemon's hand closed over Jon's. His skin felt like parchment itself, warm despite the cold. "Will you learn?" Jon did not know what learning would mean. He knew only the wall, the watch, the long grinding need. And beyond it, beyond the ice and dark, something that had once burned the world. "Yes," Jon said, and heard the lie of simplicity in the word. "I will." Aemon nodded as though he had expected nothing else. "Then we begin," he said. "And we do not speak of this to anyone. Not your friends. Not your enemies. Not even yourself when fear comes." Jon's eyes flicked to Sam. Sam looked back, pale and earnest, already swearing without words. The bolt on the door held. The snow hissed at the window. On the page, the first block of jagged script waited like a blade waiting to be taken up. The first lesson was not a word. "Breathe," Maester Aemon said. Jon did, and saw the fog of his breath bloom and fade. He stood with his hands at his sides, trying not to feel foolish. Sam sat at the table with a quill and a scrap of parchment, the folio propped beside him like a holy text. Ghost lay near the hearth, too still to be asleep, the direwolf's eyes following every motion of Jon's mouth. "Again," Aemon said, "but this time listen to your breath. Your breath is your leash." Jon obeyed. The air burned his nostrils with cold. He could hear the faint whistle of wind through the tower stones and, beneath it, the subtle crackle of tallow in the candle flames. Aemon's blind eyes stared past Jon's shoulder. "Old Valyrian is not like the common tongue," he said. "It was made for men who believed the world should kneel. The sounds are built to carry command. You will not learn it like you learned your letters. You will learn it like you learned to hold a sword." Sam's quill scratched as he wrote. Breath, posture.
"Tone."
Jon said nothing. He wanted to argue that he had not learned to hold a sword so much as he had been beaten into it, but the Maester would twist that truth into a lesson too. Aemon lifted a finger, as if pointing at a line only he could see. "There are two kinds of speaking," he said. "The kind meant to be understood, and the kind meant to be obeyed. Dragonlords preferred the second. The gods help us." Jon's stomach tightened. "You said it's a discipline," he reminded him. "A discipline can be used as a whip," Aemon replied. "Now, say this." He spoke a phrase slow. The sounds were strange in his old mouth, yet they came out clean, hard consonants, vowels clipped short, the whole thing ending on a sharp downward note. Jon tried to mimic it. The first time the phrase came out wrong. The second time it came out worse, as if his tongue had decided rebellion was easier than obedience.
Sam winced sympathetically.
Aemon did not scold. "Again," he said. Jon tried again. He felt the muscles at the back of his jaw strain. The syllables had weight, as if he were hauling stones with his mouth. "Not like that," Aemon said, and his hand rose. Jon stepped closer so the Maester could find him. Aemon's fingers touched Jon's chin, then the side of his throat. "Here," Aemon said softly, "the strength is not in the tongue. It is in the breath behind it. You are pushing the sound out with your lips, as if you were spitting. Do not spit. Strike." Jon closed his eyes, shamed by the gentleness of the correction. He drew breath in, deep to his belly, as he had been taught when Ser Alliser Thorne made him shout commands for drilling recruits. The memory of that yard, the line of shivering boys, came back with a bite. He spoke the phrase again. This time the candle flame nearest him trembled. It was a small thing, so small Jon might have missed it if he had not been watching the room for signs of magic. The flame leaned sideways, as if a breath had passed it. Sam saw it too. His eyes went wide. His quill paused over the parchment, a bead of ink swelling at the tip. Aemon's fingers tightened on Jon's chin. "Good," the Maester said, voice steady. "Again." Jon's mouth went dry. "Was that?" "Again," Aemon said. Jon did. The phrase scraped his throat. The candle flame trembled again, not toward him this time but away, flickering as if it disliked him. Ghost's tail thumped once against the floor, slow and heavy. Sam whispered, almost to himself, "It's reacting." "It is only air," Jon said, more sharply than he meant. "Only a draft." Aemon's blind eyes turned toward the candle. "The wall keeps out drafts," he said, "and the cold too when it wishes. Do not argue with fear, Jon Snow. Fear always wins the first round. You must learn to lose without surrendering." Jon swallowed. "What did I say?" Aemon smiled without humor. "A very simple thing. Something a dragon would not care to obey, perhaps, but something it would hear." The Maester's fingers slid away. "You said, listen." Sam's quill began scratching again, frantic now. "Listen." Jon stared at the candle flame, steadied, pretending innocence. Aemon spoke another word. "Now this." The sound was shorter, a hard bark, ending almost before it began. Jon repeated it. This time the candle flame did not tremble. Instead, Ghost's ears snapped forward and the direwolf lifted his head as if the word had struck him in the chest. Jon felt a chill under his ribs. "Again," Aemon said. Jon spoke it again. Ghost rose. The direwolf moved toward Jon with measured steps, not threatening, but attentive, as if waiting for what came next. Jon had called Ghost before plenty of times. He had never called him like this. Jon's voice came out thin. "What does that mean?" Aemon's answer was quiet. "Come." Jon's mouth tasted of metal. "That's... I've called him to me before. In the common tongue," Aemon said. "And because he loves you, this is different. This is the shape of command without cruelty. If you are wise, you will learn to speak it and never use it on anyone who can say no." Sam looked up. "Maester, why teach it at all, then?" Aemon's face turned toward the window, toward the black smear of night beyond frost. "Because there are things," he said, "that cannot be reasoned with. and there are things that will not understand kindness until you have first taught them that you are not prey. Jon watched Ghost, the way the direwolf's pale eyes searched his face. The animal came close enough that Jon could feel the heat of his breath. Jon lifted a hand slowly, and Ghost pressed his head into Jon's palm. The touch steadied him, not because Ghost obeyed, but because Ghost chose. Aemon's voice softened again. "We learn the words," he said, "and we learn the restraint. One without the other is ruin." Jon nodded, because his throat had forgotten how to speak. He looked down at the folio at the jagged script and saw it differ. Ently now, not as a curiosity, but as a weapon that did not look like one. "Again," Aemon said, and Jon Snow, who had been taught to endure, began to learn a language built for fire. Jon did not keep the lessons only in the tower. Words learned in secret festered if they were never tested, Maester Aemon had said. You had to take them into the cold and see whether they held. So Jon took them into the yard. The men of the Night's Watch were used to seeing him there. The yard had been the first place Jon Snow had learned the shape of command, back when he was only another black cloak among many. They assumed he went to clear his head, or to keep his sword arm from growing lazy. They did not suspect he went to wrestle with syllables. Snow fell in thin needles, whispering across his shoulders. The torchlight painted everything in shades of amber and soot. Jon stood near the rack of practice blades, hands bare, the cold chewing at his knuckles. "Zaldrizes," he said under his breath, tasting the sound like a curse. "Dragon." The word should have been ridiculous at the wall. Dragons belong to songs. Dragons belong to the south, to burning skies and the arrogance of kings. But the word sat in his mouth as if it had always been there, waiting. He spoke another phrase, one Aemon insisted he learn even before he understood its shape. "Vezov," Jon murmured. "Breathe." His breath slowed. The cold became less an enemy and more a measure. He imagined he could feel the air filling the hollow spaces behind his ribs, could feel it press against his spine like a supporting hand. When he spoke again, he did not force the sound out. He let it ride the breath. "Gita," he said, and the word snapped like a small whip. "Hold." He did not point at anything. He did not make a gesture. Yet something in the yard changed anyway. The men clustered near the fire pit, laughing over a rude joke, quieted without understanding why. A pair of stewards carrying buckets slowed as if they had heard their own names called. Jon's skin prickled. He had not meant for anyone to hear. He glanced toward the shadowed edge of the yard and saw the shape he had half expected. Ser Alistair Thorne, hard as a nail, standing beneath the overhang with his arms folded. The torchlight caught the angle of his cheekbones and the thin line of his mouth. Watching, Jon held Thorne's gaze for a heartbeat. Then he looked away, as if the man were no more than a post or a fence. Thorne's contempt was a familiar thing, but suspicion was sharper. Suspicion wanted answers. Ghost moved beside Jon, silent as falling ash. The direwolf's fur was silver in the torchlight, his eyes pale as the moon. Jon rested his fingers briefly on Ghost's neck, grounding himself. "Maester says you should not speak it like a prayer," Jon whispered to Ghost, though the animal did not care for words. "You should speak it like you mean it." He chose another phrase, one that had made the candle flame tremble in the tower. "Sovis," he said quietly. "Listen." Ghost's ears shifted. The direwolf's head turned toward the dark mouth of the tunnel that led beneath the wall. Jon had not noticed anything there, but Ghost had. The animal's attention sharpened, and for a moment Jon felt, impossibly, as if his own hearing stretched too, reaching into the dark. He heard nothing but the wind. Still, the sensation lingered, the idea of a presence that did not belong to the yard. Jon's hand went to Longclaw out of habit, though he had not drawn it. His fingers closed around the wolf head pommel. "Lord Commander," a man called, and Jon flinched at the title. He turned to see Bowen Marsh approaching, wrapped in furs, his cheeks red with cold. "My lord," Marsh said, voice polite and strained. "A raven came, from the south." Jon's stomach tightened. "From King's Landing?" Marsh's mouth twisted. Not so far. From Eastwatch, Cotter Pike says there are reports, ships, strange ones, and sailors bringing stranger tales. Tales, Jon said flatly. Marsh hesitated. He writes of a woman across the narrow sea, a queen, a Targaryen. Jon felt the word Targaryen strike his ribs like a thrown stone. His breath threatened to stumble. A dragon queen, Marsh added, as if spitting out the absurdity might make it less possible. Jon kept his face still. Men will talk of anything to warm themselves. Yes, Marsh said quickly, relieved by Jon's tone. Yes, of course. Still, Pike asks if there are orders. Jon thought of Maester Aemon in the tower. The old man's blind eyes turned toward a folio that smelled of smoke and resin. He thought of the candle flame trembling. He thought of Ghost turning his head toward darkness as if listening for something that was not there. Tell Cotter Pike to watch the seas, Jon said, and to send me any names, any descriptions. Ships, flags, anything that can be measured. Marsh nodded, already backing away. As you command. As he left, Ser Alliser Thorne stepped out of the shadow, slow and deliberate, like a man allowing himself to be seen. Talking to wolves now? Thorne called, voice sharp enough to cut the falling snow. Or to ghosts. Jon kept his gaze on the yard, not on Thorne. Go back inside, Ser Alliser. Thorne's laugh was short. The Lord Commander gives orders in the tongue of whores and dragonlords now? Jon's spine stiffened. What did you hear? Enough, Thorne said. He walked closer, boots crunching. I heard you making strange noises in the yard like a boy pretending at sorcery. If you're playing at being a king, do it somewhere that doesn't shame the watch. Jon's blood went cold. Aemon's warning echoed in his mind. A discipline can be used as a whip. Jon turned his face up toward the wall, toward its pale immensity, and felt very small beneath it. Somewhere beyond the ice and stone, men spoke of dragons as if they were storms on the horizon. Jon had just learned that a storm could begin in a single word. The raven's message lay open like an accusation. Jon had brought it to the tower the moment Bowen Marsh left him. He had not gone to his own chambers, had not even taken off his gloves. He climbed the worn stairs 2 at a time, the cold following him like a shadow, and found Maester Aemon awake despite the hour, as if the old man had been waiting for the knock. Sam was there too, hovering near the table, eyes flicking between Jon and Aemon, his hands stained with ink. He had been copying again, Jon realized, copying the drills from the folio into a safer hand, or perhaps into a hand that would not be missed if the folio vanished. Jon placed the parchment on the table. East Watch, he said. They've heard tales. Aemon's head tilted. Read it. Jon read aloud. Ships, sailors, a queen across the water. Dragons seen above a city whose name the raven spelled wrong. A priest in Volantis preaching her as savior or devil, depending on who was listening. The words sounded like the ravings of drunk men when Jon spoke them in the tower, surrounded by stone and cold. Yet Aemon did not laugh. When Jon finished, silence settled. The candle flames did not tremble. Ghost lay by the door, eyes half closed, but Jon knew he was listening. Aemon's hands moved on the blanket, fingers rubbing together as if feeling grain. Dragons, the Maester murmured. So the world turns to its old habits.
Some swallowed.
Maester, if it's true. If it is true, Aemon said, it means the balance has shifted. Fire has returned to the world. And where fire returns, shadows grow hungry. Jon's jaw tightened. What does it have to do with us? Even if she has dragons, she's across the sea. Aemon's blind eyes turned toward Jon. Across the sea, he repeated, as if tasting the distance. Jon Snow, do you think the world ends at the water's edge? It ends at the wall, Jon said, more bitterly than he meant. Aemon's lips twitched. A fair answer for a man who has stared into the dark and seen it stare back. Jon exhaled and forced himself to speak plainly. You told me to learn so I could defend the realm, he said. But what realm? The lords squabble. The king burns men. The Watch is hungry, the wildlings are desperate, and the dead. His voice tightened around the word. The dead don't care what language you speak. Aemon's face softened. No, he said. They do not. Sam shifted in his chair. Then why teach him? Why teach any of it? Aemon's fingers found the edge of the folio. Because the living do care, he said. And because there are creatures in this world that are not dead, not living, but something in between, made by men who believed they could bind nature like a servant. Jon thought of the candle flame leaning away from his voice. The dragonlords. Yes, Aemon said. Valyria did not fall only because of fire and stone. It fell because it believed itself above consequence. And yet, his hand paused. And yet I was born of that blood. And so was Daenerys Stormborn if she lives. And so, Aemon did not finish. Jon felt a strange throb behind his eyes, a pressure of unsaid things. So what? Aemon's blind gaze held him. For all his frailty, for all his age, there was still a king's strength in the bones of his attention. So, Aemon said, when a dragon hears command, it does not hear only sound. It hears lineage. It hears the old arrogance of those who first taught it to bow. Jon's skin prickled. You said language alone couldn't force it. Aemon's mouth tightened. I said it should not, he corrected. There is a difference between what should be and what is. Sam's voice rose, small and frightened. Maester, are you saying Jon Snow could? No, Aemon said, cutting him off. Then softer. I am saying that Jon Snow must learn what those words were made for, so he can refuse to become what they were made to make. Jon stared at the raven's message again. A queen with dragons. A world shifting. He imagined a vast shadow crossing a city's rooftops. Imagined people looking up and seeing their old nightmares made real. If she has dragons, Jon said slowly, she will come for the Iron Throne. Aemon's head lifted. Perhaps. And then the realm will bleed, Jon said, the certainty bitter. And while they bleed, the dead will come. Now you understand, Aemon said. Jon's fists clenched. Then why doesn't the Watch send word? Why doesn't anyone gather the lords? Why aren't we preparing? Aemon's laugh was a dry thing. Because men do not prepare for the end, he said. They prepare for the next meal, the next insult, the next victory they can taste. The end is too large. It does not fit inside their pride. Sam's quill trembled in his fingers. What if we wrote to her, he blurted, to Daenerys Targaryen, if she's real, if she has dragons, if she could help against the others? Aemon's head turned toward Sam, and for a moment Sam looked like a boy again beneath that attention. Write to a queen across the sea? Aemon said. A queen who has been hunted, betrayed, starved. And what would you tell her? Come north and freeze for strangers who would not kneel. Sam flushed. We could tell her the truth. The truth is a blade, Aemon said, and blades make enemies before they make allies. Jon's gaze dropped to the folio. The jagged script seemed to press forward, impatient. He thought of Thorn stopping in the yard. He thought of how easy it had felt, how dangerously natural. What else do you know? Jon asked quietly. Aemon's hand tightened on the blanket. More than is good for you, he said. Jon waited. In the silence, the raven in its cage rustled, feathers whispering. The candle flames held steady. At last Aemon spoke, voice low. I know, he said, what it is to be offered a crown and refuse it. Jon's brow furrowed. Aemon's blind eyes lifted as if he could see a memory written on the air. When my brother died and the realm looked to me, I fled, he said. I chose the Cha, in and the wall. I told myself it was for duty. Perhaps it was. Perhaps it was fear. Perhaps it was both. Sam was very still. Aemon's voice steadied. I tell you this because you will be offered things, Jon Snow. Not a crown, perhaps, but power. And power will come dressed as necessity. Jon thought of the word hold and the way it had caught Thorn's body. I don't want power. No one worth trusting does, Aemon said. And that is why it comes for you. The old man's hand moved across the table until it found Jon's wrist. His grip was surprisingly firm. "Look at me," Aemon said, though he could not see. Jon met the blind gaze anyway. "Say the words again," Aemon instructed. "The first ones. Listen. Come. Hold." Jon's throat tightened. "Here. Here," Aemon said. "In this room. To remind yourself what it feels like when the world responds. To remind yourself that you can choose what you do next." Jon drew breath. He spoke the words softly, careful, letting them ride his breath as Aemon had taught. The candle flames trembled, not wildly, not as if afraid, but as if acknowledging a presence. Sam's eyes shone in the candlelight, caught between wonder and dread. Aemon released Jon's wrist. "Good," he said. "Now swear to me." Jon's mouth went dry. "Swear what?" "That you will not use these words for pride," Aemon said. "That you will not become the man who believes the world owes him obedience." Jon swallowed hard. The wall loomed beyond the window, unseen but felt. "I swear," Jon said. Aemon nodded. "Then we continue," he said, "and we pray the world gives you the chance to keep the oath." Being Lord Commander meant eating everyone's hunger. They brought it to him in complaints and requests, in muttered curses and shouted demands, in sullen faces that wanted to be satisfied and could not name what satisfaction would look like at the end of the world. Jon Snow sat in the Lord Commander's chair, too big, too heavy, and listened until his ears burned. The great hall stank of smoke and boiled turnips. Men hunched over rough tables, hands wrapped around cups as if warmth were a religion. Torches hissed. Somewhere a dog barked. "And if we give the wildlings shelter, we feed them first," a steward was saying, his voice sharp with resentment. "That's how it will be. I'm telling you. They'll take our bread, and then they'll take our beds, and then our women." "We have no women," Dolorous Ed muttered from the back, and a few men snorted, but the laughter died quickly. Jon held up a hand, palm open, a gesture he had learned from men who had expected obedience. The hall quieted in uneven waves. The steward glared but shut his mouth. Bowen Marsh stood beside the dais, cheeks flushed, looking as though the cold had crawled into his bones and decided to live there. Othel Yarwick hovered near him, eyes flicking from face to face like a man counting enemies. Ser Alistair Thorne leaned against a pillar, arms folded, his expression a sneer carved into stone. Jon could feel Thorne watching him, waiting for weakness like a wolf waits for lameness. Jon spoke in the common tongue, measured. "We will feed the children first," he said. "Then the sick, then the rest, wildling or crow. That's my order." A murmur rolled through the hall. Angry, tired, afraid. A voice rose. "Why should we starve for them? They're not brothers." Jon's patience, stretched thin by endless need, frayed. He could have answered with reason. Because the dead don't care what side you were on when you lived. Because hunger makes enemies faster than swords. Because you cannot ask men to fight for you while you let their children freeze. But reason was slow and fear was quick. He felt the old temptation rise. One word, one breath, and the hall would fall silent as a pond after a stone. Aemon's voice echoed in his mind. A discipline can be used as a whip. Jon drew breath, deep, controlled. "Listen," he began, but the word that came out was not in the common tongue. "Sovis," Jon said. The sound cracked through the hall like a thrown cup. The effect was immediate and wrong. Men stopped mid-chew. A man halfway through a curse swallowed it whole. Torches flickered, their flames bending away from Jon for a heartbeat. The hall's murmur collapsed, not into respectful silence but into startled stillness, as if the room itself had decided to hold its breath. Jon's heart hammered. He had not meant to say it aloud. Thorne's head snapped up. Bowen Marsh's eyes widened, confusion and suspicion twisting together. Othel Yarwick's mouth fell open. Ghost rose from beside the dais, ears forward, gaze locked on Jon with a fierceness that was not anger but attention. The direwolf moved as if pulled by the word. Jon felt heat flush his face. He forced his voice steady. You will listen, he repeated in the common tongue, rougher now, because I am done begging you to see what's in front of you. If you want to hate them later. If you want to starve, do it alone. But while I am Lord Commander, we do not let children die to prove we are proud. A man near the middle table spat. What was that word? Jon's jaw tightened. He could feel the room pressing for answers. He could feel Thorne's gaze like a knife between his ribs. A word from the south, Jon said flatly. From a book. Nothing more. Some men looked unconvinced. Some looked frightened. Fear made people superstitious, and superstition made people cruel. Which talk? Someone muttered. Jon's gaze flicked toward the far end of the hall, where Melisandre sometimes stood like a red shadow, watching. She was not there tonight. That absence felt like a relief and a warning all at once. He stood. The chair scraped behind him. My orders stand, Jon said. If any man refuses, he can take his grievance to the wall and shout it into the cold. He stepped down from the dais. Men made a path for him without realizing they were doing it. Ghost followed at his heel, silent as a thought. As Jon passed Thorne, the older man leaned close enough that Jon could smell ale on his breath. You're playing at things you don't understand, Thorne hissed. Jon did not stop walking. So are you, he said without looking back. He left the hall and let the cold hit his face like a slap. Snow fell in soft sheets now, muting the yard. The night was so quiet it felt like the world had paused. Ghost pressed against his leg. Jon rested a hand on the direwolf's head, fingers sinking into thick fur. I didn't mean to, Jon murmured. Ghost's pale eyes stared up at him, unblinking. The direwolf did not judge. He only watched. Jon looked up toward the wall's pale immensity and thought of a queen across the sea, of dragons breathing fire into a warm sky. He thought of the word listen and the way the hall had obeyed without meaning to. He felt, for the first time, that his own voice might become something he could not take back. Maester Aemon's cough sounded like parchment tearing. Jon had heard men die before. He had heard the wet rattle of lungs on the battlefield, the sudden silence after a scream. But Aemon's sickness was slower, quieter, more intimate. It unfolded in breaths and pauses and the gradual shrinking of a man who had once refused a crown. Sam sat on the edge of the cot, clutching a cloth as if he could wipe illness away. His cheeks were wet. He did not bother to hide it. The tower was too tired for pride. Aemon lay propped on pillows, his skin pale and thin, his lips cracked. When Jon entered, the old man's blind eyes turned toward the sound of his boots. Jon Snow, Aemon whispered. Jon knelt beside the bed. I'm here, he said, and hated how small the words sounded. Aemon's hand groped weakly until Jon took it. The maester's fingers felt colder than they should have. Bring it, Aemon murmured. Jon hesitated, then reached into his cloak. The folio's leather was warm against his chest from being kept close. He placed it gently into Aemon's hand. The old man's fingers traced the cover as though reading it. You've been practicing, Aemon said. Jon swallowed. Yes. Good, Aemon whispered. Because I won't be here much longer to correct you. Sam made a broken sound. Maester, don't. Aemon's head turned slightly toward Sam, as if the old man could see the boy's grief. Hush, Samwell Tarly, Aemon said softly. A man who fears death has not lived enough. Sam pressed the cloth to his mouth and nodded, trembling. Jon's grip tightened around Aemon's hand. You'll get better, he lied, because truth felt like cruelty. Aemon's lips twitched, almost amused. No, he said, but you might. Jon frowned. Me? Aemon's blind gaze held him, steady even as his body failed. You are standing on the edge of something, Aemon said, and you do not know it yet. Jon felt anger flare, desperate and useless. Then tell me, he said. Stop speaking in riddles. Tell me what you know. Aemon's breath hitched, then steadied. I know, he said. That blood is louder than men pretend. Jon went still. Aemon's fingers tightened on the folio. Long ago, he whispered, I received a letter from a friend in the south. He wrote of a prince who loved songs and summer, of a girl with winter roses in her hair, of a war started by lies and ended by fire. Jon's heart began to pound, slow and heavy. Aemon's voice grew thinner. He wrote of a child, Aemon said, a child hidden, a child whose name could not be spoken without knives appearing. Jon's mouth went dry. What are you saying? Aemon's face turned toward Jon, as if the old man could see him clearly now despite the blindness. I am saying, Aemon whispered, that when you speak that tongue, you do not sound like a man who learned it yesterday. You sound like a man remembering. Jon's hand trembled. I'm not a...
Aemon sambortid, frightened.
Please. Aemon's hand lifted weakly, silencing him. I won't name what I cannot prove, Aemon said. Names make wars, but I will give you this. There are truths that sleep in bone. The dragonlords believed blood was a key. They were right in a way that damned them.
Jon Snow hasht spun.
Ned Stark's face rose in his mind, stern, quiet, unyielding. His father, his not father, the unasked questions, the way men looked away when he entered a room. Aemon's voice softened, almost kind. Listen, he whispered, and this time he said it in the common tongue, not the other. Whatever blood runs in you, Jon Snow, it does not own you. Do you hear me? Blood is a tool men use to claim you. Do not let them. Jon's throat tightened. Then why teach me? He asked, voice breaking despite himself. Why give me the weapon at all? Aemon's lips parted, and for a moment Jon thought the old man might laugh. Instead, Aemon coughed, long and tearing. Jon held his hand and waded through it, helpless. When Aemon could speak again, his voice was a thread. Because, he whispered, the world will need someone who can speak to fire without worshipping it. Sam wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, angry at his own tears. Maester, he whispered, what do we do? Aemon's blind eyes turned toward Sam. You, he said, will go to the Citadel. You will learn what they have hidden behind chains of ink and pride. And you will send what you find to Jon Snow, even if they call you a fool for believing in monsters.
Sam nodded, sobbing quietly.
I will, he promised. I will. Aemon's head turned back toward Jon. His hand, still holding the folio, pressed it weakly against Jon's fingers. And you, Aemon whispered, will learn the rest, not the words alone, the restraint, the mercy, the humility the dragonlords never had. Jon's eyes burned. I don't know if I can, he admitted. Aemon's smile was faint. Neither did I, he whispered. Yet here we are. Silence stretched. The candles hissed. Outside the window, the snow fell without mercy, as it always did. Aemon's grip loosened. His breathing grew shallow. Jon felt panic rise, sudden and raw. Maester, he said, voice urgent. Stay with me, please. Aemon's lips moved. Jon leaned closer, ear near the old man's mouth. Aemon whispered a phrase in Old Valyrian. Soft, barely a breath, but precise. Jon recognized it from the folio, though he had never dared to speak it aloud. Nar edruta, Aemon murmured. My duty endures. Then Aemon's breath went out and did not return. Sam made a keening sound that tore through the tower like a knife. Jon stayed kneeling, holding the old man's hand, staring at the stillness of his face. For a long moment Jon could not move. He felt the folio's leather beneath his fingers like a heartbeat that was not his own. He felt Ghost's presence at the door, silent and steady. Aemon's last lesson settled into Jon's bones like winter. Speak to fire without worshipping it. Morning at Castle Black was not a sunrise so much as a thinning of darkness. Samwell Tarly moved like a man underwater. He packed with shaking hands, folding clothes, tucking parchment between covers, wrapping ink in cloth. Every few moments he would stop and stare at nothing, as if expecting Maester Aemon to clear his throat and call him a fool for his clumsiness. Jon stood by the table, the folio open before him. The jagged script looked sharper in the gray morning light, less mysterious and more like a warning carved into bone. Sam paused, clutching a book to his chest. "I don't want to go," he said hoarsely. Jon did not look up. "You must." Sam's eyes flared with sudden anger. Grief turned outward because it hurt too much to keep it inside. "You're sending me away," he accused, as if Jon had killed Aemon with the order. "I'm sending you to live," Jon said quietly, "and to learn."
Sam's mouth trembled. "I'm afraid."
"So am I," Jon admitted, and the honesty surprised him. He traced a line of Old Valyrian with his finger, not touching the ink, just following its shape. "But fear won't keep the dead out." Sam swallowed hard. "What if the Citadel won't listen? What if they laugh at me?" "Then you write anyway," Jon said. "You send ravens even if no one answers. You keep digging even if the earth is frozen." He looked up then, meeting Sam's wet eyes. "Maester Aemon believed in you." Sam's face crumpled. He nodded, biting his lip. "He believed in you too," Sam whispered. He told me once. He said you had the weight of a king in you, but you didn't know it." Jon's jaw tightened. "Don't say that." "It's true," Sam insisted, desperate. "The way you," he gestured helplessly, "the way you stand, the way people listen even when they don't want to." Jon's gaze flicked to the raven cage. The bird watched him with a cold black eye, head cocked, as if judging whether Jon was worth carrying a message for. "People listened yesterday because I made them," Jon said, and the bitterness in his voice made Sam flinch. Sam's eyes widened. "You mean, you used it?" Jon said nothing. The silence was answer enough. Sam stepped closer, lowering his voice as if the walls might hear. "Jon," he whispered, "that's dangerous." Jon's mouth twisted. "Yes." Sam looked at the folio. "But it worked." Jon's hand clenched on the table edge. "So does a whip," he said. "It works until it turns the beast feral." Sam's gaze dropped. "Aemon wanted you to know," he said softly. "He wanted you to have every chance." Jon stared at the ink until it blurred. "Aemon wanted me to choose," he said, "and now I have to choose without him." Sam pulled a folded parchment from his satchel, edges smudged with ink. "I copied some of the drills," he said, voice timid, as if offering contraband. "Not all. Just the ones he said were restraint, the calming phrases, the ones for soothing." Jon took it, careful. The parchment smelled of Sam's ink and fear. "You should have the originals," Sam said, "in case the folio is lost or stolen." Jon's eyes flicked to the door. After Aemon's death, the tower did not feel safe anymore. Too many men moved through Castle Black with questions in their eyes and bitterness on their tongues. Secrets had weight. They left tracks. "I'll keep it close," Jon promised.
Sam swallowed.
"And you'll burn it if you have to," he added quickly. If it's too much." Jon's fingers tightened on the parchment. "No," he said, and surprised himself. "No, I won't burn it. Not yet." Sam's brows drew together. "Why?" Jon's gaze went to the window, where the wall loomed pale beyond drifting snow. "Because," Jon said slowly, "if the world is waking, we can't afford to throw away weapons just because they frighten us." He looked back at Sam. "We can only afford to learn how not to become monsters while holding them." Sam's eyes shone. He nodded reluctantly, as if accepting an answer he did not like because he could not find a better one. A horn sounded in the yard below, one long blast, then another. Jon's shoulders tightened automatically. A signal. Not the wildling horn, not the 3 blasts of the dead, but the steady call of routine, men assembling, life continuing. Sam flinched at the sound. "When do I leave?" "Soon," Jon said. "Before the road gets worse. Before the sea freezes."
Sam swallowed.
"And you?" Jon's gaze drifted back to the folio. The jagged script waited, patient. "I stay," Jon said, though part of him already knew the word was temporary. Sam nodded, then hesitated. "Jon," he whispered, "promise me something." Jon looked up. "Promise me you won't use those words to make people obey you," Sam said, voice shaking. "Promise me you'll remember their people, not beasts." Jon held Sam's gaze. He thought of Thorne stopping in the yard. He thought of the hall's sudden stillness. He thought of how easy it had felt, like stepping into boots that fit too well. "I promise," Jon said, and meant it as fiercely as he could. Sam let out a breath, shaky. He reached out, awkward, and squeezed Jon's arm. Jon endured it, then returned it, brief and firm. A warrior's affection, a brother's. Ghost rose and moved between them, brushing against Sam's leg. Sam laughed wetly through tears, bending to scratch behind Ghost's ear. "Take care of him," Sam whispered to the direwolf, as if Ghost were the one leaving. Ghost's pale eyes looked past Sam, past Jon, toward the door and whatever waited beyond it. The raven in the cage rustled, feathers whispering, impatient for flight. Jon folded Sam's copied drills and tucked them inside his cloak, close to his heart. The weight felt heavier than parchment. When Sam finally lifted his satchel and headed for the stairs, Jon watched him go with a grim tenderness. Sam's footsteps faded downward, swallowed by the tower and the wall's endless hunger. Jon turned back to the folio. Alone now, he traced the next line of script and began to speak. It happened on a night when the cold tasted like iron. Jon had made too many enemies too quickly. Men who had believed the watch belonged to them, not to the realm. Men who saw wildlings as wolves and kings as salvation. Men who thought duty meant preserving the past even when the past was a corpse with blue eyes. He knew they hated him. He did not know until the moment it began how much. They came at him in the yard, where the snow-muffled footsteps and torchlight made every face look like a mask. Jon had been walking back from the shield hall, his mind full of lists and shortages and the constant weight of command. Ghost was at his side, silent. The first shove came from behind. Jon stumbled, catching himself on instinct, hand going to Longclaw. Voices surged around him. "Traitor!" someone shouted. "You've sold us to the wildlings." Jon turned, scanning faces. He saw Bowen Marsh near the front, cheeks red, eyes bright with something like righteousness. Othel Yarwick stood beside him, jaw clenched. Ser Alliser Thorne's hard face was there too, and for a heartbeat Jon felt a bitter certainty. Thorne had wanted this for years. "What is this?" Jon demanded, voice cutting through the noise. "Stand down." A man stepped forward, wick whittlestick, his eyes wild. "You're sending us to die for your pets," he snarled. "My orders keep us alive," Jon shot back. He tried to make his voice the Lord Commander's voice, the one that held the hall. "Back away. Now." They did not. Another shove. A fist. Jon blocked it, then felt hands seize his arms. Ghost snarled, low and vicious, teeth flashing in the torchlight. "Hold him," someone yelled. Jon's heart hammered. He twisted, wrenching free with a brutal jerk that would have broken a weaker man's grip. He drew Longclaw halfway, Valyrian steel singing faintly as it left the scabbard. The sight of the blade made some men hesitate. Valyrian steel had a way of reminding people that legends were real. But hatred is its own legend. Bowen Marsh stepped closer, breath puffing white. "Lord Commander," he said, voice trembling with a practiced calm. "You've gone too far." Jon stared at him. "Marsh," Jon said, trying to keep disbelief from his tone. "Put down whatever madness you're holding. Go back inside." Marsh's face tightened. "You broke your vows," he said, and his voice cracked on the word vows as if he were pleading with himself. "You brought them through. You gave them land. You think the others will stop at our gate because you hate wildlings?" Jon snapped. His patience, worn thin, tore open. "You think the dead care about your pride?" Marsh flinched as if struck. Behind him, men shifted, daggers glinting. Ser Alliser Thorne's voice cut through. "He's bewitched them," Thorne snarled. He speaks which words? Jon's blood went cold. The folio flashed in his mind. The drills. The way the hall had quieted when he said listen. The temptation always there, to use one word and end the chaos. Ghost growled, a sound like thunder under snow. Jon raised his free hand, palm open. Stop, he commanded. And again the wrong word rose to his lips, faster than thought. Gita, Jon said. Hold. The yard stilled. Not completely. Men did not freeze like statues. But a ripple of hesitation ran through them, a faltering in their forward motion, as if an invisible line had been drawn across the snow and their bodies had been forced to consider it. Torches flickered, flames bending. Somewhere a horse stamped, nervous. For a heartbeat Jon felt the world balanced on the edge of that single word. He could end this without blood, he thought wildly. He could force them back. He could force them. A knife punched into his side. The pain was sharp and shocking, stealing his breath. Jon looked down and saw the hilt buried beneath his ribs, blood already darkening his black wool. For a moment he did not understand. Then the man holding the knife, one of the stewards, face twisted with fear, yanked it free. Another knife flashed. Jon tried to turn, tried to bring Longclaw up, but hands grabbed him again, dragging his arms back. Ghost lunged, teeth snapping. Someone kicked the direwolf a boot to ribs. Ghost snarled, fury bright, but bodies crowded in, torches flaring, men shouting. Jon's breath came ragged. He tasted blood, metal, and heat in the cold. He tried to speak, but his mouth filled with something thick. Marsh stepped forward, tears shining on his cheeks like ice. His hand shook as he held a dagger. For the watch, Marsh whispered, as if it were a prayer to forgive him. Jon's mind screamed, not for himself, for the wall, for the living, for everything he had been trying to hold together with bare hands. He drew breath, deep, and forced the next word out not as command, not as desperation, but as pure need. Sovis, Jon tried to say. Listen. The word came out broken, choking on blood. Marsh's dagger drove into Jon's belly. The pain folded Jon in half. His knees hit the snow. The cold rushed up to meet him, greedy. Men stepped back, faces pale and horrified now that the deed had become real. Someone retched. Someone prayed. Someone laughed, too high and frightened. Jon's vision blurred. The torches became smears of orange. Snowflakes fell onto his lashes and melted. He heard ghosts howl, raw, furious, grieving. The sound tore through Jon's chest worse than any blade. Jon's hand reached for Longclaw, fingers sliding on the hilt. His strength was leaving him, pouring into the snow with his blood. He fell forward. As his face neared the ground, Jon's cheek brushed cold iron. Someone had dropped a blade. The metal shocked him, and in that shock, memory flared. Aemon's hand on his chin. Aemon's voice. Strike. The folio's jagged script in candlelight. Command meant for fire. Jon's lips moved, barely. He did not know if sound came out. He did not know if anyone heard. But somewhere deep in his bones, something answered. Not the men, not the torches, not even Ghost. Something older. Something that remembered heat. The yard darkened. The snow softened into shadow. And Jon Snow went into the cold with a word half-spoken on his tongue. Death was not darkness. Death was cold, and the cold had shape. Jon drifted in it, weightless, as if the world had become the deep water beneath a frozen lake. Above him, muffled, came sounds, distant voices, the scrape of stone, the low rumble of something like thunder. He tried to reach for them. His arms did not exist. He felt, impossibly, the tug of a bond. Ghost. Not the direwolf's body, not fur and teeth, but a presence like a white flame in the cold. Jon reached for it the way a drowning man reaches for air, and the bond tightened, painful and intimate. He saw through Ghost's eyes for a heartbeat. Men carrying his body, pale faces, torches bobbing, the taste of blood on snow, the stink of fear. Then the vision tore away, and Jon was back in the cold between. A word hovered in the dark, jagged as the script in the folio. Vezov. Breathe. Jon tried, though he had no lungs. The word did not fill him with air. It filled him with will. The cold resisted. He drifted again, time meaningless. Yet the pull of ghost remained, a rope around his soul. He followed it, not knowing whether he was climbing or falling. Sound returned first. The murmur of voices, a woman's low chant, the crackle of flame. The smell of smoke seeped into him like memory. His body hurt. The pain was distant at first, as if belonging to someone else. Then sharply his, a sudden flood, knives, blood, torn flesh. Jon's fingers twitched. Again, a voice whispered. Not Aemon's, not Sam's. A woman's voice, accented, steady with desperate faith. Again, the voice said louder, as if commanding the world to obey. Jon tried to open his eyes. They would not move. He heard another voice, rough with fury. This is madness, Davos Seaworth snarled. You did this. You and your damned god. The woman answered calmly. I did not put knives in their hands. Then bring him back, Davos growled. Bring him back and You'll what? The woman said softly, and Jon heard the faintest edge of pity beneath the steel. Kill me? You'd be doing me a kindness. The chant resumed. Jon could not understand the words, not at first. They sounded like the crackle of fire and the hiss of snow on hot stone. Then, through the haze, Jon recognized a rhythm. Not the woman's language, not the common tongue. Old Valyrian. The realization hit him like a surge of heat. His mind clawed at the sound, desperate to make sense of it. The syllables were wrong in places, accented, bent, but the structure was there, the shape of command wrapped in prayer. Jon's lips moved. A strangled sound came out, half a breath, half a word. The woman's chant faltered. What? She whispered. A rough voice near the edge of the room cursed. A deep voice, Tormund Giantsbane, Jon realized dimly, though how he knew he could not say. He's moving, Tormund said. Wonder and fear braided together. By the gods, he's... Ghost whined. Jon forced his eyes open. The world slammed into him. He lay on a table in a dim room, candles burning in a rough circle. The air stank of sweat and smoke and old blood. His body was bare to the waist, bandages wrapped around his wounds, red seeping through. Pain surged so violently he almost vomited. Melisandre stood over him, red robes pooling like spilled wine. Her face was pale, her eyes huge with shock. She looked as if she had expected a miracle and still could not believe it had happened. Davos Seaworth stood near her, jaw clenched, eyes blazing. Behind him, wildlings crowded the shadows. Tormund, tall and broad, his beard bristling. Others with wary eyes and hands near weapons. Night's Watchmen hovered too, faces drawn, uncertain who they were now. Jon sucked in a breath that scraped his throat raw. He tasted ash. His fingers twitched again. His hand found the edge of the table, gripping, knuckles whitening. Melisandre stepped closer, trembling. He's, she whispered. He's. Jon tried to speak, but his throat was a torn road. Still, a word forced itself out, not in the common tongue, not even as thought, but as instinct. Sovis, Jon rasped. Listen. The candles flared. Not wildly, not like a sudden gust, but as if the flames had been fed from within. Light leapt up the wicks, brightening the room. Shadows sharpened. Faces went still. Melisandre's eyes widened until the whites showed. Old Valyrian, she breathed, and fear threaded her awe. Davos stared at Jon as if seeing him for the first time. What did you just say? He demanded. Jon blinked, confused. He had not meant to say it aloud. The word had come out the way blood comes out when you're cut, without permission. Tormund shifted uneasily. That's not the usual noise the dead make when they get up, he muttered, half joking, half terrified. Jon's gaze drifted toward the corner of the room where Ghost stood. The direwolf's fur bristled, eyes fixed on Jon with fierce intensity. Ghost took a step forward, then another, until his nose was near Jon's hand. Jon's fingers brushed Ghost's muzzle. The contact grounded him, anchoring him in flesh. Melisandre's voice lowered. "You spoke a command," she said, as if the word command itself might summon consequence. "You spoke as those who rode dragons spoke." Jon's breath hitched. The pain in his body made it hard to think, but Aemon's voice echoed as if carried on the smoke. "Speak to fire without worshipping it." Jon tried to sit up. His wounds screamed. Davos moved instinctively to help, then hesitated, torn between anger and relief. "Why am I—" Jon began, and the words broke. His throat burned. Melisandre's eyes shone with tears she did not seem to understand. "I asked my lord for a sign," she whispered, "and he gave me you." Davos spat. "Your lord gave you luck," he snarled, "and all of us misery." Jon's head swam. He closed his eyes for a moment, fighting the darkness that tried to pull him back under. When he opened them again, he forced himself to speak, slow and hoarse. "Where are the Jon asked. Davos's face hardened. "Dead," he said, "or running. We hanged the ones we caught." Jon's stomach twisted. Not for them, for what it meant, for the final severing of whatever he had been before. Jon's gaze slid back to Melisandre. "You were speaking," he rasped. Melisandre swallowed. "I know some," she admitted. "Words of power, words of fire. I did not know you knew them." "I didn't," Jon said, but even as he said it, he remembered the folio, the drills, Aemon's hand on his chin. He remembered the yard, the mutiny, the word hold, the way the world had hesitated. He remembered saying listen as he died. And he remembered something else, faint as a distant drum. An answering presence in the cold, something that had heard him even when men did not. Jon's hand tightened on Ghost's muzzle. He drew a careful breath, using the old discipline as a rope to pull his mind into order. "Vezov, breathe." Melisandre watched him with a new kind of fear. "What are you?" she whispered. Jon opened his eyes and met her gaze. "Tired," he said, and the simplicity of it felt like truth. But beneath the truth was a deeper certainty, settling into him like a second heartbeat. The world had heard his voice in death, and something in the world had listened. Dawn came thin and gray, like a promise spoken without conviction. Jon stood at the gate of Castle Black and felt the wall behind him like a hand on his neck. The wounds beneath his cloak pulled when he moved, a reminder written in pain. His black wool felt heavier now, not with water or snow, but with history. He had walked the yard in the night after waking and looked at the gallows where men swung stiff in the cold. Men he had eaten beside. Men who had called him brother. Men who had put knives in him and prayed their own names would be remembered as loyal. Jon had not spoken to them. He had watched until his eyes went dry and his mind emptied of anything but a hard, quiet understanding. The watch was broken in him. The vows had been torn open with his flesh, and whatever was stitched back together by Melisandre's fire was not the same garment. Davos Seaworth stood by the gatehouse, arms folded, his face drawn. He looked like a man who had been forced to swallow too much grief and found it lodged in his throat. When Jon approached, Davos pushed off the wall and stepped closer. "You're leaving," Davos said. It was not a question. Jon nodded. His breath steamed. "I'm done," he said quietly. "My watch ended when they killed me." Davos's jaw worked. "I can't say I blame you," he admitted. "But the world doesn't care about fairness." Jon's eyes flicked toward the wall's pale face. "The world never has," he said. Tormund Giantsbane waited nearby, his great bulk wrapped in furs, a grin trying and failing to pretend this was an adventure. "You sure about this, Crow?" Tormund asked, scratching his beard. "South is full of soft men who think they're hard. They'll talk and talk until you drown in it." Jon almost smiled. "I've drowned worse," he said. Ghost stood at Jon's side, tail low, eyes alert. The direwolf's presence steadied Jon more than anything else. When Jon looked down, Ghost looked back, as if asking where they were going now that the old paths were gone. Jon carried a leather satchel slung across his shoulder. Inside was the folio, wrapped in cloth tucked deep, as well as Samwell Tarly's copied drills, the ink smudged in places where Sam's tears had fallen. Jon could feel the weight of it like a stone against his ribs. A weapon, a warning, a duty that did not end just because a man's vows did. Davos's gaze lingered on the satchel. "What's in there?" he asked. Jon hesitated. Davos had earned truth more than most men, yet truth had teeth. "Words," Jon said finally. Davos frowned. "Words." Jon met his eyes. "Words that can become chains," he said. "Or keys." Davos studied him, suspicion and curiosity warring. At last he shook his head, as if deciding he had no room left to argue with strange things. "Just don't let them make you a monster," Davos said gruffly. Jon's mouth tightened. "I'm trying," he said. Davos's gaze softened, unexpectedly. "If you find the king," he said, meaning Stannis Baratheon without naming him, Tell him he was right about you." Jon did not answer. Compliments felt like burdens. He stepped toward the gate. The portcullis creaked as men lifted it. The sound echoed through the stone like a groan. As Jon crossed the threshold, he felt something in him flinch, an old loyalty, a habit of belonging. He forced himself not to look back. Looking back made you a man who might return. Jon did not know if he could return to anything anymore. Outside, the world was white and endless. Snow stretched across the ground in soft drifts. The air was knife-cold. The road south cut through it like a scar. Tormund fell into step beside Jon, boots crunching. "So," Tormund said, trying to sound casual, "what are you going to do down there? Take a castle? Kill a king? Find a woman?" Jon's throat tightened. He thought of the Raven's message. Of Daenerys Targaryen, a queen across the sea with dragons. Of the dead marching with blue eyes. Of the living squabbling over thrones while the world cracked beneath them. "I'm going to make them listen," Jon said softly. The words hung in the cold. Tormund glanced at him, brow furrowing. He said, wary. "And how do you plan to do that?" Jon's hand slid to the satchel strap. He drew a careful breath, feeling the old discipline steady him. He did not speak the other tongue. He did not let the temptation rise. "However I have to," Jon said, and the grimness of his own voice unsettled him. Ghost moved ahead, silent, carving a path through the snow as if he already knew the way. As the wall receded behind them, Jon felt its presence fade like a hand releasing his throat. The air did not feel warmer. Nothing felt kind, but something did feel possible. Far away, beyond snow and sea and the distance between continents, morning light spilled over a different world. Daenerys Targaryen stood in a courtyard of sun-warmed stone, her hair stirred by a softer wind. Dragons shifted around her. Drogon black as midnight, Valyrian pale as cream, regal green as deep forest shadow. Servants and guards kept their distance, eyes lowered, bodies tense with the knowledge that death had wings. Daenerys rested a hand against Drogon's neck, feeling the heat beneath his scales. "Easy," she murmured, her voice gentle in the language of her childhood and sharp in the language of her blood. The dragons were restless today, not hungry, not angry, just unsettled, as if some distant storm had sent a tremor through the air. Regal lifted his head suddenly. His green eyes narrowed, focusing on nothing visible. His wings flexed, half unfurling. A low sound rumbled in his throat. Not a roar, but something closer to a question. Daenerys frowned. "What is it?" she asked him, stepping closer. Regal's head turned, slow and deliberate, toward the west, toward a horizon he could not see, toward a cold land he had never flown above. Daenerys followed his gaze, uneasy. "There is nothing there," she whispered, though she did not know if she was comforting him or herself. Regal's nostrils flared. He tasted the air as if tasting a memory. And somewhere, far beyond the sea, on a road cut through snow, Jon Snow drew breath and kept walking south with a book of dragonlord words pressing against his heart. The gift was a different kind of cold than the wall. At Castle Black, the cold had been a fact, a constant, a blade kept clean. Here, south of the ice, it had moods. It gathered in hollows and clung to tree trunks. It seeped up from frozen mud in slow breaths. The land felt bruised, as if it had learned to flinch. Jon walked with his hood up and his hands buried in his gloves. Yet he could still feel the sting where his body had been cut open and sewn shut again. The wounds were healing, the skin knitting under wool and leather, but the memory of knives did not heal. It sat in him like a second skeleton. Tormund Giantsbane crunched through the snow beside him, broad shoulders rolling, beard crusted with frost. He carried a spear as casually as another man carried a walking stick. "You're quiet," Tormund said, glancing over, quieter than a Southron maiden on her wedding night. Jon did not look at him. "I've had enough talk for a lifetime." "That's a pity," Tormund said cheerfully. "Talking is how you make enemies into friends, or friends into enemies, or something." He waved a hand as if conversation were smoke. "Either way, it passes the time." Behind them, a dozen wildlings tramped in uneven formation, faces red from cold, eyes always scanning. They were free folk now, yet freedom had not made them soft. If anything, it had sharpened them, made them watchful, as if they expected the world to try to drag them back into cages. Ghost moved ahead in silence, paws sinking into powder without sound. The direwolf's presence was a steady pressure at Jon's side, like a hand on his back when he might otherwise collapse. Jon touched the satchel strap across his chest, not because he feared losing it, but because the weight inside anchored him. Leather, paper, ink, words that could make a room hold its breath. He hated that he knew that now. They passed an abandoned crofter's hut half-caved under snow. The roof beams jutted like broken ribs. A door hung open, swinging slightly in the wind, creaking a sound too much like a cry. Jon's chest tightened. For a heartbeat, he was back in the yard at Castle Black, torchlight and shouting, the first blade sliding into him. His breath hitched. Vezov, he told himself. Breathe. He drew air deep, down past panic, and let it out slowly. The cold burned. The world steadied. The hut became only a hut again. Tormund watched him with narrowed eyes. "You do that," he said. "That breathing thing, like a man trying not to piss himself in front of a bear." Jon's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "It helps." Tormund said. "I usually just shout." They walked on. The wind picked up, stirring the pines so their branches hissed together. In the distance, a line of smoke rose from somewhere unseen, thin as thread. A village, perhaps, or a camp. Jon's mind slipped, as it often did now, to the sea and the letter he'd heard read. Dragons. A queen. A world waking. Sometimes, when the wind fell into a certain hush, Jon thought he heard something else under it. A low vibration, so faint it could have been imagined. Not thunder, not the wall settling. Something like a distant wing beat, echoing through bone. He told himself it was grief playing tricks, because grief could make anything seem like a message. When they stopped to rest near a stand of bare birch, the wildlings spread out. One crouched to check tracks. Another leaned close to a boy with a bandaged hand, murmuring a joke to make him grin. They were not soldiers, Jon reminded himself. Not the way Southron lords define soldiers. Yet they moved like men who had survived long enough to be dangerous. Tormund squatted beside Jon, pulling a strip of dried meat from a pouch. He offered it. Jon took it, chewed without appetite. "You said you were done," Tormund said around his own chewing. "You said you were leaving the Black Crow life behind." Jon swallowed. "I did. And yet you're walking toward Winterfell," Tormund said, eyes sharp now beneath humor. "Toward the Bolton." Jon's jaw tightened. He stared at the snow, at the small tracks of some rabbit or fox. "I'm walking away from the wall," he said. "Winterfell is in the same direction." Tormund snorted. That's the kind of answer men give when they want to lie without telling themselves they're lying. Jon did not answer. The truth was tangled. He had left because the watch had killed him. He had left because vows felt like ash in his mouth. He had left because he could not bear to stand under the wall one more day and pretend the world made sense. But he had not left duty behind. Duty clung like frost. Tormund tore meat with his teeth. "The girl," he said after a moment. "Your sister. She's out there. You know that Jon's gaze snapped to him. "What?" Tormund shrugged, as if it were obvious. "Red Woman talked. Onion Knight talked. They said the Boltons have your blood. A little wolf boy, too. If the girl's alive, she'll come. Wolves always come back to the pack." Jon's throat tightened. He had not let himself think of Sansa. Not since he was a boy at Winterfell, half in love with her because he was half in love with everything he could never touch. "She won't," Jon said, but the certainty was brittle. Tormund's grin returned, showing teeth. "We'll see." They rose and walked again. The day remained gray. The snow thickened, then thinned. The land rolled into low hills, patches of dead grass showing through like old scars. As afternoon bled toward evening, Ghost stopped suddenly, body going still. Jon halted. The wildlings behind him froze, hands going to weapons. "What is it?" Tormund murmured, voice low. Ghost's ears were forward. The direwolf stared down the road. Jon followed his gaze and saw riders. 3 horses emerged from the trees, their hooves muffled by snow. The riders were cloaked, faces shadowed by hoods. The lead rider sat straight, posture too disciplined to be a wildling. Jon's heart began to pound, and he did not know why until the second rider's silhouette resolved. Tall, broad-shouldered, a sword strapped across her back, moving with the ease of a trained fighter. The third rider was smaller, bundled in furs, hair a dark spill from beneath her hood. Something in Jon's chest cracked open. The riders drew closer. The small one pulled back her hood. Red hair, dulled by travel, eyes like winter sky. A face Jon knew better than he should, because he had spent years memorizing it from the corners of rooms where he did not belong. "Sansa," he whispered, and the name hurt. The horse stopped. Sansa Stark, lips parted. For a heartbeat her eyes went wide, not with joy, but with shock, as if she were looking at a ghost that had stepped out of the snow. Then she slid down from the saddle and walked toward him, boots sinking. She stopped a few paces away, breathing hard, staring at his face as if searching for proof. "You're alive," she said, voice hoarse. Jon swallowed. "So are you." Her eyes flicked over him. His black cloak, his gaunt face, the faint bruise shadows under his eyes that resurrection could not erase. Her gaze dropped, catching on the tightness at his side where his wounds pulled. The anger that flared in her expression was sudden and fierce. "They said you were dead," she whispered. "They said." "I was," Jon said, because lying to her felt impossible. Sansa's breath hitched. Her eyes filled, but she did not let tears fall. She had learned that tears were currency, Jon realized, and she had spent too much already. Behind her, the tall woman dismounted in one smooth motion and approached, helm tucked under her arm. Her blonde hair was braided tight, her face weathered and steady. "Jon Snow," Brienne of Tarth said, voice formal, respectful. "I am Brienne of Tarth. I swore an oath to your mothers." She stopped, corrected herself with a flicker of discomfort. "To Catelyn Stark. I have brought your sister to you." Jon's throat tightened around the name Catelyn. He nodded stiffly. "Thank you." A younger man remained on his horse, watching, cheeks red with cold. Jon recognized him from stories more than memory. Podrick Payne, Tyrion Lannister's old squire. He gave Jon a cautious nod. Tormund leaned close to Jon's ear. "That's a big woman," he murmured, delighted. "I like her." Brienne's eyes flicked toward Tormund, wary. Her hand hovered near her sword hilt, not quite threatening, but ready. Tormund grinned at her, wide and unrepentant. Sansa stepped closer to Jon. Her voice dropped. "You're leaving," she said. Accusation and fear braided together. Jon looked at the road behind her, then at the snow ahead. "I needed air," he said, and heard how thin it sounded. Sansa's jaw clenched. "I needed you," she said simply. The words struck harder than any knife. Jon opened his mouth and found nothing. He had imagined many reunions once when he was younger. None had been like this. Two survivors standing in a field of snow, looking at each other like strangers wearing familiar faces. Sansa's gaze shifted to the wildlings behind him. Men and women with rough furs and hard eyes. She flinched slightly, instinctive. Then she forced herself to stand straighter. "They're with you," she said. "They're with me," Jon confirmed. Sansa's eyes returned to his. "Then come back," she said. "Come back to Castle Black. We need to talk. We need to." Her voice wavered, anger rising to cover fear. "We need to take Winterfell back." The word Winterfell landed between them like a stone dropped into deep water, sending ripples through everything Jon had tried to keep still. Jon stared at her, feeling the old ache of that place. Stone halls, hearth fires, laughter. A family that had never quite been his. He felt the new emptiness too, the part of him that had died and come back wrong. "I can't," he said quietly. Sansa's expression hardened. "You can?" she said, and there was steel in her voice now, steel she had forged in places Jon could not imagine. "You're the only one who can." Jon felt the satchel shift against his ribs, the folio inside like a heartbeat. Words, keys, chains. Sansa reached out, hesitated, then placed her hand on his arm. Her fingers were cold through his cloak. "Please," she said, and for the first time her voice sounded like the girl Jon remembered, the one who had once fed birds from her palm and believed the world was fair. Jon's breath caught. Vezov, he told himself again. Breathe. He drew air deep. The cold steadied him. He looked at Sansa Stark, his sister in everything that mattered, and realized the world had not allowed him to be done. "All right," Jon said, voice rough. "We'll talk." Sansa's shoulders sagged with relief she tried to hide. Brienne's posture eased slightly. Even the wildlings behind Jon shifted, murmuring. Tormund slapped Jon on the back hard enough to jolt his wounds, and Jon winced. "See," Tormund boomed. "Wolves always come back to the pack." Jon stared toward the south, toward Winterfell, toward whatever waited. The road did not look like a road anymore. It looked like a blade. They made camp before night fully swallowed the trees. The clearing they chose was small, sheltered by pines that bent inward like old men huddling. The snow was thinner here, scattered by the needle carpet beneath. A fire caught quickly. Dry twigs, birch bark, a breath of flame coaxed into life. This heat was modest, but in the north modest warmth could feel like mercy. Sansa sat close to it, hands extended, fingers flexing as if trying to remember how it felt not to be cold. Jon watched her from across the flames, the way her face had changed. She had always been pretty. Now she was sharp. The softness had been pared away, leaving angles and resolve. Brienne stood at the edge of the firelight, scanning the trees with an alert stillness. Podrick hovered near her, trying to look brave. The wildlings stayed in loose clusters, some eating, some watching, all distrustful of the newcomers. Tormund, for his part, looked delighted by the tension, as if it were another kind of entertainment. Sansa's eyes stayed on Jon. "They killed father," she said suddenly, and Jon flinched though he had known it for years. "And Robb, and mother." Her voice tightened around each name like a fist. "They killed Rickon too, I thought. For a long time I thought he was dead. But Ramsay Bolton has him." Jon's stomach clenched. "You're sure?" Sansa nodded, gaze hard. "Ramsay showed me proof. He enjoys it." Her lips thinned. "He sent me letters after I escaped. He wants us to come." "He wants a fight," Jon said. "He wants to hurt us," Sansa corrected. "He wants to remind the North what happens when you try to be Stark." Jon stared into the fire. The flames danced, bright and hungry, never satisfied. He thought of Aemon's words, "Speak to fire without worshipping it." He tried not to look at the way the flames leaned subtly toward him when he breathed. Tormund grunted. "We can hurt him back," he said. "Take his castle. Hang him from his own walls." Sansa's gaze flicked to the wildling leader, wary. "You think it's that simple?" Tormund shrugged. "Nothing is simple," he said, still cheerful. "But killing a man is usually simpler than talking about killing him." Brienne's voice cut in, calm and practical. "Winterfell is well defended," she said, "and Ramsay Bolton is not a man who will meet you on even ground unless he believes he can win." Jon looked at Sansa. "How many men does he have?" "Enough," Sansa said. "Roose Bolton is dead. Ramsay has taken everything for himself. House Umber is with him. House Karstark too." Her mouth twisted as if the names were poison. "And he has my brother." The mention of Rickon made Jon's chest ache. Rickon had been a wild boy, quick to grin and quicker to anger. Jon remembered chasing him through the yard at Winterfell, the boy laughing as if the world would always be safe. "He'll use Rickon," Jon said softly. Sansa's eyes flickered with pain. "Yes," she whispered. "He will." The fire popped, sending a brief spray of sparks up into the night. Ghost lifted his head, ears pricked, then settled again, pressing his flank against Jon's boot. Jon's wounds throbbed beneath his cloak, not unbearable, but constant. He shifted, trying to find a position that didn't pull. Sansa noticed, eyes narrowing. "You're hurt," she said. Jon hesitated. "You're still hurt," she corrected, voice sharpening. "What happened at Castle Black?" Jon's mouth went dry. He could not tell her everything. He could not tell her how it felt to die, to come back and find your own men looking at you as if you were a mistake. He could not tell her about the word that made men hesitate, about the other tongue that tasted like smoke. "They stabbed me," Jon said simply. Sansa's face went white, then flushed with anger. "The Night's Watch?" she breathed. Jon nodded once. Brienne's hand tightened on her sword hilt. Podrick looked horrified. Tormund barked a laugh. "Crows," he said, spitting into the snow, "always biting the hand that feeds them." Sansa stared at Jon as if trying to fit the pieces together. "And you?" Her voice broke. She swallowed and tried again. "And you're here." Jon's gaze dropped to the fire. "I am," he said. For a moment Sansa's expression softened into something dangerously close to grief. Then she pushed it down and replaced it with resolve. "Then we take Winterfell," she said, as if saying it firmly would make it possible. "We gather the north. The houses will follow you." "They won't," Jon said, and the bluntness stung even him. "Not because they don't love the Starks, because they're afraid." Sansa's eyes flashed. "Fear can be broken." Jon's mouth tightened. "With what? A speech? A banner?" He gestured toward the wildlings. "These are the men I have." "And you," Sansa said, voice low, "you are Ned Stark's son." Jon flinched at the words, not because they were untrue in the way that mattered, but because they were not true in the way blood cared about. He looked away quickly, toward the treeline, toward the dark that hid secrets and wolves. Hoofs sounded then, muffled by snow. A rider emerged into the clearing, cloak snapping in the wind. The horse was lathered, breath steaming. The man in the saddle sat forward with exhaustion and stubbornness. Davos Seaworth swung down stiffly. His beard was rimed with frost, his cheeks raw from wind. He looked at the assembled company, wildlings, Brienne, Sansa, and his eyebrows rose. "Well," Davos said dryly, "I leave Castle Black for a day and you collect half the north." Jon's chest tightened with an unexpected warmth. "You followed," he said. Davos shrugged, as if it were nothing. "Someone has to make sure you don't walk off a cliff," he said, then looked at Sansa. Recognition flickered. "Lady Sansa, you've grown." Sansa stared at him, then nodded politely. "Ser Davos," she said, though the title was wrong and Davos seemed to take no offense. She looked at Jon again. "So," she said, as if Davos's arrival had sealed something. "Engineer. We go back. We make our plans. We gather men." Davos rubbed his hands near the fire, grimacing at the heat on cracked skin. "Plans are good," he said. "Men are better. We'll need both." Jon's gaze slid from face to face. Sansa's fierce determination, Brienne's steady vigilance, Tormund's savage optimism, Davos's stubborn loyalty. He felt the weight of their expectations settle onto him like snow on a branch. He thought of the hall at Castle Black, the way the air had changed when he spoke the other word. He would need their belief, but he could not afford to make them believe by force. Jon drew breath deep, steady, and said, "All right, we go back. We start tomorrow." Sansa's shoulders eased. Davos nodded, satisfied. Tormund grinned as if this were all a joke he'd been waiting to hear. Brienne's eyes lingered on Jon, thoughtful. "You're changed," she said quietly, not accusing, simply stating. Jon met her gaze. He did not deny it. "So are we all," he said. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the trees an owl called, a sound thin as a knife. Snow began to fall again, soft as ash. Jon watched the flakes drift into the fire and vanish. He felt the heat on his face and the cold on his back, caught between two forces that did not mix. Sansa leaned toward him, voice low enough that only he could hear. "We can't lose," she said. Jon stared into the flames until his eyes burned. "No," he agreed. "We can't." But he did not say what he thought because the thought was a shadow he did not want to feed. "If the North will not listen, I know a way to make it." They moved as soon as the gray light returned, because the North did not wait for anyone to heal. Davos had brought horses for Jon and Sansa, and a sack of provisions tied to his saddle, dried fish, hard bread, a wedge of cheese that smelled like old socks. Felt like wealth. The wildlings grumbled but accepted it, because hunger made you humble. One joined them on the second day, looming out of the trees like a moving hill. The giant's skin was weathered and scarred, his hair tangled and rimed with frost. He carried a log on his shoulder as if it were a toy. When Sansa saw him, she nearly fell off her horse, eyes wide. Tormund laughed until his breath came out in white bursts. "He's on our side," Jon said, because he could see the question in Sansa's stiff posture. Brienne watched one with wary fascination, hand near her sword. "Giants," she murmured, as if saying the word might summon more. Jon nodded. "He fought for us at the wall," Sansa swallowed. "Then we're truly in a new world," she said, and there was no wonder in it, only exhaustion. They rode through villages that looked like they'd been punched in the mouth. Da hung gruk. Windows were boarded. Smoke rose from a few chimneys, but most hearths were cold. People watched from behind fences, eyes hollow. When Jon spoke, asking for bread, for directions, for news, they answered politely but without hope. The North had been bled too many times. It did not believe in rescue anymore. Davos did most of the talking. He had a way of making people answer without feeling cornered. Brienne kept watch. Podrick carried messages and looked eager to be useful. Tormund told obscene jokes to wildlings and frightened peasants alike, and somehow it made them laugh despite themselves. Jon watched them all as if from a distance. Sometimes he felt as though he were walking beside his own life, close enough to touch but not quite inside it. Death had taken something from him, something small and vital, like the taste of sweetness or the easy rise of laughter. At night, when the others slept, Jon sat near the fire with Ghost at his side and opened the satchel. The folio's leather looked darker in firelight, almost wet. Jon unwrapped it with careful hands. The pages, pale and thin, caught the light as if they held their own. He read the drill Sam had copied, tracing the script with his finger. He whispered the words under his breath, not to command, not to test power, but to keep the language from slipping away. "Sovis, listen." The fire leaned subtly, as if straining to hear. Jon's breath hitched. He forced himself to look away, to stare into the dark beyond the firelight where the trees stood like silent witnesses. "You swore," he reminded himself. "You swore to Aemon." He closed the folio and tucked it back into the satchel, tying the strap with more force than necessary. On the fourth day, they reached a holdfast belonging to House Mormont's cousins. Stone walls, a wooden gate, a few men with spears. Their faces were hard with suspicion when they saw the wildlings. Jon rode forward with Sansa beside him. Davos hung back, watching the men on the wall. Brienne's posture was rigid, a shield made flesh. A man with a gray beard leaned over the parapet. "State your name," he called. Jon pulled back his hood. "Jon Snow," he said, "Lord Commander of the Night's Watch." The man's eyes narrowed. "Lord Commander?" he repeated, as if tasting the title and finding it bitter. "And why do you bring wildlings to our gate?" "We need men," Jon called back. "Ramsay Bolton holds Winterfell. He has Rickon Stark." Bolton has Winterfell," the man interrupted. "Bolton has the North. That's the way of it now." Sansa leaned forward, her voice sharp as a blade. "Winterfell is Stark," she called. "It always has been." The man's gaze flicked to her, and something shifted. He saw her red hair, her face. He saw the Stark in her despite everything. "Lady Sansa," he said slowly, recognition softening suspicion by a fraction. "We thought you dead." Sansa's jaw tightened. "I'm not," she said, "and neither is my brother. We're here. We're asking you to stand with us." The man hesitated. Men behind him murmured. Fear moved through them like a draft. Jon felt his frustration rise. Every day lost was a day Ramsay used to tighten his grip. Every refusal was another stone in a wall Jon would have to climb with bleeding hands. He could make them, he thought, and the thought sickened him. Vezov, Jon told himself. Breathe. He drew air deep. He let it out slowly. When he spoke again, he kept his voice steady, ordinary. "If you won't fight for us," Jon said, "fight for your own children. Bolton will not stop at Winterfell. He will take your grain, your daughters, your sons. He'll take everything and call it peace." The man on the wall frowned, the warning sinking in. He glanced back at his men, as if weighing their hunger against their fear. Then a woman's voice called from behind, clear and commanding. "Open the gate." The bearded man started. He turned. Jon saw movement on the wall. Smaller figure, young, stepping forward. A girl appeared above the parapet, wrapped in a thick cloak. She had a hard face and a stubborn chin, and her eyes were sharp as a knife. Lyanna Mormont. Jon had heard of her, a child lady ruling Bear Island because the men had died. He had not expected her to look so much like a grown woman trapped in a small body. She stared down at Jon Snow with something like challenge. "You're Jon Snow," she said, not asking. Jon inclined his head. "I am." Lyanna's gaze slid to Sansa, softened briefly. "Lady Sansa," she said. Then her eyes returned to Jon, hard again. "You died," she said, blunt. Jon's stomach tightened. "So they say." Lyanna's mouth twisted. "The world is full of men who say things," she said. "My uncle said the Boltons would keep the North safe. He said..." She spat over the wall, a small gesture full of contempt. "He said a lot. He's dead now, and the Boltons are still here." Jon held her gaze. "Then help us take them out," he said. Lyanna stared at him for a long moment. Jon could feel the entire holdfast watching, waiting for the child to decide. At last Lyanna lifted her chin. "If you're half the man my father was," she said, "you'll earn it. Open the gate," she ordered again, and this time there was no hesitation in her voice. The gate creaked. The bar lifted. Wood groaned. As they rode in, Sansa leaned close to Jon. "A child?" she murmured, amazed. "She commands better than most men." Jon's mouth tightened. "She's had to," he said. Inside the courtyard, men gathered, staring at wildlings as if they were beasts. One crouched awkwardly, trying to fit within walls built for smaller creatures. He looked vaguely offended by the stone. Lyanna Mormont descended the stairs and stopped in front of Jon's horse. Up close she was even smaller, her cheeks wind-chapped, her hair dark and braided. She looked Jon up and down, unblinking. "You look like you've been dead," she said. Jon almost laughed, but it died in his throat. "I feel like it," he admitted. Lyanna's eyes narrowed, as if she appreciated honesty. "Good," she said. "Men who feel too alive do stupid things." Sansa hid a smile. Davos watched Lyanna with a glimmer of admiration. Lyanna turned, addressing the men gathering in the yard. "House Mormont remembers," she said, voice carrying. "We are not Boltons. We are not cowards. We will fight." A murmur rose, uncertain, then strengthening. Jon felt something in his chest loosen. Not hope exactly, but the sense of a rope thrown into deep water. Lyanna looked back at him, eyes hard. "Don't waste our men," she said. Jon nodded. "I won't." But as he said it, he felt again the satchel against his ribs, the folio inside, and wondered what it meant to waste men when words could move them like pieces on a board. The North was gathering, and Jon Snow was terrified of what he might become if it was not enough. Lyanna Mormont did not waste time on ceremony. She led them into a hall that smelled of smoke and damp stone, where bear skins hung on the walls and torches burned hot enough to make the air shimmer. Men lined benches, watching the newcomers with guarded faces. The wildlings did not sit. They hovered near the doors, uneasy in a place where stone pressed in and the ceiling felt too low. Lyanna climbed onto a carved chair at the head of the hall, feet not touching the floor. Still, when she looked down at the room, she looked like she owned it. "You want men," she said to Jon, as if the entire conversation could be reduced to that. "You have them, for now. Why should they follow you beyond this hall?" Jon met her gaze. "Because Ramsay Bolton is a threat to all of us," he said. Lyanna tilted her head, unimpressed. "That's not a plan," she said. "That's a complaint." A few men chuckled. Davos's mouth twitched, caught between amusement and respect. Sansa stepped forward. "We're gathering the houses," she said, voice firm. "We'll march on Winterfell." Lyanna's eyes flicked to Sansa, softer. "And if the houses don't come?" she asked. Sansa's jaw tightened. "They will," she said, though it sounded like a prayer. Lyanna's gaze returned to Jon, sharp. "Will they?" she asked. Jon felt the weight of their stares. He thought of the empty villages, the fearful men on walls. He thought of the way the hall at Castle Black had gone still. He could make them, he thought again, and the thought made his stomach twist. Instead he said, "Maybe not, but we'll take whoever will stand." Lyanna's eyes narrowed, as if she were testing him. "A man who says maybe is either honest or weak," she said. "Which are you?" Jon's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He forced himself to loosen them. "I'm tired," he said, and the bluntness made the room hush. "I've buried friends. I've watched men die for pride. I've been killed by my own brothers." He swallowed hard. "I don't want to lie to you. I don't know if we can win. But I know if we don't try, we'll die anyway." Lyanna stared at him. For a moment she looked very young, a child hearing a truth too large. Then her face hardened again. "That's better," she said, as if approving a sword stroke. "Now tell me what you know about Ramsay Bolton." Jon exhaled. "He's cruel," he said, "and clever. He'll use Rickon. He'll try to draw us out. He won't fight fair." Lyanna leaned forward, elbows on the chair arms. "None of that matters," she said. "Men are cruel. Men are clever. The question is, what do you do when he makes you angry?" Jon's throat tightened. The question hit too close. He remembered Ramsay's letter, the way it had been described. Taunting, foul. He remembered how quickly anger could pull him into foolishness, like riding alone into a line of spears. He remembered the word hold. Jon drew a slow breath. "I don't know," he admitted. "Yet." Lyanna's mouth twisted. "You should," she said. "Because my men don't die because you couldn't hold your temper." Jon stared at her, surprised by the fierceness of his own gratitude. This child did not flatter. She did not worship. She demanded. Davos stepped forward, hands clasped. "Lady Lyanna," he said, voice careful. "The Lord Commander, Jon Snow, has faced things most men never will. He held the wall against. Lyanna cut him off with a sharp glance. "I know who he is," she said. "I also know what men do when they think a banner makes them invincible." She looked at Jon again. "If you want to lead, lead. Don't just stand there looking sad." Brienne's eyes flicked to Sansa, then to Jon, thoughtful. Podrick tried not to laugh. Jon's mouth tightened. "All right," he said. "We gather what men we can. We march quickly. We set a camp close enough to Winterfell to force Ramsay to answer, but far enough that he can't catch us at night. We don't chase him. We hold our line." Lyanna nodded slowly, approving the cadence. "Hold?" she repeated, and the word sent a small chill down Jon's spine. Sansa watched Jon closely. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if she'd noticed the way the word sat in his mouth. Lyanna gestured sharply. "Food," she said. "Weapons. Horses." She looked at Jon again. "And if Ramsay Bolton sends you a letter full of threats, what do you do?" Jon took a breath. "I read it," he said, "and I don't do what he wants." Lyanna's eyes gleamed. "Good," she said, "because if you do, I'll haunt you." A few men laughed, and the laughter was not cruel. It was the laughter of people who had been starving for something to believe in and found, unexpectedly, a child who refused to let them sink into hopelessness. When the meeting ended, Lyanna dismissed them with a wave like a queen. Men filed out, murmuring. The wildlings followed, eager for air. Davos lingered, exchanging a respectful nod with the girl. Brienne and Podrick moved to the door, alert. Sansa waited until they were out in the corridor, away from ears. Then she stepped close to Jon, voice low. "You spoke well," she said. Jon's mouth tightened. "I was terrified," he admitted. Sansa's gaze sharpened. "You always look terrified now," she said, not unkindly, simply observant. "Is it because of what happened at Castle Black?" Jon's throat tightened. He did not know how to explain the emptiness, how to explain that death had taken a piece of him and left a door open where it used to be closed. "Partly," he said. Sansa's eyes lingered on his face. "And the other part?" she asked. Jon hesitated. The corridor was dim, lit by torches that hissed in their brackets. He could feel the folio's weight against his ribs like a secret. He could lie. He could say grief. He could say fear of the Boltons. He could say anything. Instead he said, "I don't trust myself," and the honesty tasted like blood. Sansa stared at him, startled. "Why?" Jon's jaw clenched. "Because when people refuse to listen," he said, voice low, "a part of me wants to make the Sansa's eyes narrowed. "With what?" she demanded. Jon forced a breath. "Vezov." "With my voice," he said, and hated the way it sounded like madness. Sansa's gaze flicked to the torches. For a heartbeat she looked uncertain. Then she looked back at Jon, expression hardening into something like pragmatism. "Whatever you are," she said quietly, "be it. Just don't turn it on us." Jon felt the words strike deeper than they should have. He nodded once, stiff. "I won't," he promised. Sansa held his gaze, then reached out and touched his arm again, brief and firm. "Come," she said. "We have more houses to convince." Jon followed her down the corridor, feeling the torch's heat on his face and the cold of the stone on his back. Fire and ice. He wondered, not for the first time, whether he belonged to either. The next doors were harder. House Mormont had been a small miracle, an island of loyalty in a sea of fear. Jon learned quickly not to expect miracles twice. They rode from holdfast to holdfast, the company growing in small increments like a snowdrift. A few men here, a few there, some old enough to have fought for Robb Stark, their eyes lined with old grief. Some young enough to have been children when the wolves last ran free, their faces tight with inherited resentment. At Deepwood, Mott the Glovers refused them. The Lord's brother stood in the yard, wrapped in furs, eyes flinty. "You bring wildlings to my gate," he said, disgust thick in his mouth. "You bring a bastard and call him Stark. Why should House Glover bleed for you?" Sansa's cheeks flushed with anger. Because Ramsay Bolton will bleed you eventually, she snapped. The man sneered. We made our peace, he said. We have to live. Davos stepped forward, voice smooth. My lord, he began. Peace with Ramsay Bolton is not peace. It's a leash. Today he lets you keep your head. Tomorrow he tightens. The Glover man's mouth twisted. And you'd have us die for pride, he said. Jon stood still, hands clenched inside his gloves.
Pride.
Always pride. He wanted to shout that it wasn't pride. It was survival. It was the dead marching. It was the world cracking. He wanted to speak one word and make the man listen. Hold. Jon felt the syllable rise like bile. He swallowed it down. He drew breath deep, steady, letting it fill the hollow behind his ribs. Vezov. Then live, Jon said, voice controlled. But know this, when Ramsay comes for you, we won't be here. Not because we want you dead, because you chose to stand alone. The words landed, not like a blow, but like a stone placed on a grave. The Glover man's eyes narrowed, uncertainty flickering beneath defiance. For a heartbeat, Jon thought the man might relent. Then the man's pride reared. Get off my land, he snapped and turned away. Sansa's face twisted with fury. She reined her horse hard enough that the animal tossed its head. As they rode away, snow whipping across their faces, Sansa's voice shook. Coward, she spat. Jon's jaw tightened. He's afraid, he said. That's what cowards are, Sansa shot back. Jon looked at her, surprised by the venom. Sansa stared ahead, jaw clenched, eyes bright with anger she could not afford to shed. Fear doesn't make a man evil, Jon said quietly. It just makes him small. Sansa's laugh was bitter. Small men ruined our family, she said. Jon had no answer to that because it felt true. They made camp that night in a ruined sept. The roof half collapsed, the stones cold and damp. Someone had smashed the carved faces of the seven, leaving only blank hollows. The place felt abandoned not just by people but by gods. Tormund sat with his wildlings, roasting meat over a small fire, laughing loudly. One crouched nearby, chewing on something that might have been half a goat. Brienne paced the broken nave like a guardian. Podrick dozed upright, head bobbing. Sansa sat alone on a fallen stone, staring at the fire with a flat expression. Jon approached quietly and sat beside her, leaving a respectful distance. After a long moment, Sansa said, "You're angry too," without looking at him. Jon stared at the cracked stone floor. "Yes," he admitted. Sansa's gaze finally flicked to him. "But you swallow it," she said. Jon's mouth tightened. "If I don't," he said, "it takes me somewhere I don't want to go." Sansa's eyes lingered on his face. "That place," she said, voice low. "Is it the voice you talked about?" Jon's breath caught. He glanced around, but the others were far enough, the fire crackling loud. "Yes," Jon admitted. Sansa's expression did not soften. "Show me," she said. Jon stared at her. "No." Sansa's eyes flashed. "You expect me to trust you," she said. "But you won't show me what you can do?" "It's not something I want to do," Jon said, voice tight. "It feels wrong." Sansa leaned forward, her face lit by firelight, eyes hard. "Wrong doesn't matter," she said. "Not anymore. Ramsay Bolton did wrong to me every day and called it marriage." Her voice trembled, but her gaze did not. "If you have a weapon, you use it." Jon felt a chill crawl up his spine. He thought of Aemon's hand on his wrist, the old man making him swear. He thought of the candle flame trembling, of men in the hall going still. "It isn't a weapon," Jon said, though he knew it was a lie. Sansa's mouth twisted. "Everything is a weapon," she said. "Even kindness, especially kindness." Jon looked at her, and in her eyes he saw not just his sister, but the shadow of what the world had done to her. He felt something in his chest crack, a grief he had not let himself feel because he had been too busy surviving. "I'm sorry," Jon said, and the words were too small. Sansa's gaze flickered, as if she'd forgotten how to receive apology. She looked away quickly. Jon's hand hovered, then rested lightly on the stone between them, not quite touching her. "I won't use it," he said quietly. "Unless I have to." Sansa's laugh was bitter. "You'll have to," she said. "We always have to." The fire popped. Sparks drifted up and vanished into the broken roof. Jon stared into the flames and felt the other language press against his teeth like a secret trying to escape. He forced it back down. In the quiet, he heard a faint sound beyond the sept. Wind moving through trees, or perhaps something else. Ghost's ears lifted. The direwolf rose, silent, and padded toward the broken doorway, nose testing the air. Jon's hand went to Longclaw out of habit. He watched Ghost disappear into shadow, then reappear, calm again. No threat, only the restless night. Still, the faint vibration lingered in Jon's bones, as if something far away had heard the conversation and shifted. Sansa stared at the fire as if it were an enemy. "We need more men," she said, voice flat.
Yo. Ennu dead.
"We will," he said, though he did not know if it was true. He felt the weight of the folio against his ribs and wondered how many men could be replaced by a word. He hated himself for wondering at all. Winterfell stone held heat the way a dead man held breath. The castle had been built to endure winter, but under Ramsay Bolton it felt like winter itself had moved in and taken up residence. Torches burned, yet their light seemed reluctant to spread. Shadows clung in corners like mold. Ramsay sat in the great hall with a cup of wine in his hand, lounging as if the chair belonged to him by right of birth rather than right of knife. He wore leather armor, not because he expected an attack within his own walls, but because he liked the feel of protection. He liked the idea that even in comfort he was ready to hurt. At his feet knelt a boy in chains. Rickon Stark's hair had grown wild, his face dirty, his lips cracked. His eyes were bright with hatred, sharp as a trapped animal's. He glared at Ramsay as if stare alone could cut him. Ramsay smiled down at him, delighted. "You look like your father," Ramsay said softly. "Did you know that? That solemn look, like you're about to lecture me about honor." He leaned forward. "Did your father ever teach you what honor gets you?" Rickon spat at him. The spit hit Ramsay's boot and slid down the leather. Ramsay laughed, a light sound. He looked up as a man approached, one of his stewards, holding a letter sealed with wax. Ramsay took it, broke the seal with casual fingers, and began to read. His smile widened. "Well," Ramsay murmured, "the dead bastard walks." Across the hall, small Jon Umber stood with his arms folded, face hard. He had brought Rickon to Ramsay, a gift wrapped in betrayal. His men lingered near the pillars, big and silent, watching. Ramsay looked at Small Jon. "Did you know?" Ramsay asked, as if they were discussing the weather. Small Jon's mouth twisted. "I heard rumors," he said. "Crows are always chattering." Ramsay hummed. "Rumors," he said, savoring the word. "Rumors that Jon Snow is gathering men. Rumors that the Stark girl is with him." He glanced down at Rickon, eyes gleaming. "Rumors that my sweet wife has returned home." Rickon's chains rattled as he lunged forward, trying to bite. Ramsay moved his foot, nudging the boy back as if he were a dog. "Careful," Ramsay said, voice almost kind. "I like you alive. Alive is more fun." He finished reading the letter. It was from a man in the countryside, reporting the movements of Jon Snow's little army. Wildlings, Mormonts, a scattering of loyalists. Not enough to take Winterfell, the man had written. Not enough unless more houses joined. Ramsay's eyes glittered. "They're desperate," he said, pleased. "Desperate men do foolish things." He stood, crossing the hall with lazy steps. His boots echoed on stone. He stopped in front of Rickon and crouched, bringing his face close to the boy's. "Your brother is coming," Ramsay whispered. Rickon's eyes flashed. "Jon isn't my brother," he spat, words hard with childish certainty. "He's a bastard." Ramsay's smile widened. "Ah," he said softly. "So you do know. That's good. Bastards make the best stories." Everyone loves a bastard trying to be something he isn't. Rickon's lip curled. "He'll kill you," he said, voice shaking with fury and fear. Ramsay's eyes were bright, almost tender. "Maybe," he said, "but first I'll make him watch you die." He reached out and brushed a dirty lock of Rickon's hair from the boy's forehead, a gesture grotesquely gentle. "That's what brothers do," Ramsay murmured. "They watch." Rickon trembled, but he did not look away. Ramsay stood. He turned toward the side door, from behind which came a low growl, deep and eager. Hounds. They smelled something, and the sound of their hunger made the air in the hall tighten. "Bring the dogs out," Ramsay said to a servant, voice casual. "Not yet," he added, smiling, seeing the boys flinch. "Just let them see. Let them know there's a meal coming." The servant hurried away. The growling grew louder, then a chorus of barking erupted. Rickon's face went pale. Ramsay watched it with satisfaction. Small Jon shifted, uncomfortable. "Why keep the boy?" he asked, voice rough. "Kill him and be done." Ramsay's smile vanished, replaced by mild disdain. "Because killing him now is wasteful," Ramsay said. "Because fear is more useful than death. Because men don't march for a corpse. They march for hope." He looked at the other man, eyes cold. "Do you know what hope is, Umber?" Small Jon's jaw tightened. "A lie," he muttered. Ramsay's smile returned. "Exactly," he said. "And I'm going to use it." He walked back to his chair, sat, and took another sip of wine. He leaned back, as if the whole matter were entertaining rather than urgent. "Send a letter," Ramsay said, "to Jon Snow. Tell him to come. Tell him to bring my wife. Tell him," he paused, lips curling. "Tell him I have his little brother. Tell him I'll give the boy back. In pieces." The steward bowed, pale. Ramsay's gaze drifted to the high windows where snow pressed against the glass. "He'll come," Ramsay said, almost dreamy. "And he'll do something stupid. Men always do when they think they're saving someone." Rickon stared at Ramsay with hatred so fierce it looked like fire. Ramsay smiled back, delighted by it. "You're brave," he told the boy. "It makes this better." Behind the hall's doors the hounds barked and barked, hungry for the taste of Stark. Ramsay's fingers drummed on the arm of his chair, a slow rhythm like a heartbeat. Somewhere far away, men gathered under a wolf banner, thinking they could take a castle back. Ramsay Bolton thought about the moment Jon Snow would see Rickon run. He imagined the bastard's face when hope turned into ash. And he smiled because for Ramsay Bolton, the world was nothing but a game played with sharp pieces. They camped within sight of Winterfell's walls, close enough that the castle's shape cut into the horizon like a wound. The sight did something to Jon, pulled at him sharp and painful. Winterfell had been home. Winterfell had been a place where he stood just outside the circle of warmth and pretended he did not mind. Now the castle wore Bolton banners like scars. Flayed men fluttered in the wind, obscene against gray stone. Sansa stared at the walls for a long time without speaking. When she finally turned away, her face was tight, pale with contained fury. They set their tents on a low rise, the ground frozen hard beneath. Fires burned in pits, guarded from wind with stones. Men moved in wary patterns, tightening straps, checking weapons, speaking in low voices. In the war council tent, Davos leaned over a rough map scratched into a hide, stones marking positions. Jon stood with his hands braced on the table, staring at the crude lines as if he could force the world into certainty by staring hard enough. "We can't match them," Davos said, voice blunt. "Not in numbers." Tormund slammed a fist on the table. "Numbers don't matter if you're brave," he said. A northern lord, older, thin, with wary eyes, snorted. "Bravery doesn't stop arrows," he said. "Or cavalry." Sansa's voice cut in sharp. "Ramsay will try to bait us," she said. "He'll send Rickon out. He'll make Jon." She stopped, swallowed. "He'll make us run." Jon's jaw clenched. He felt anger surge, hot and immediate because she was right and he hated that she was right. "Then we don't run," Jon said. The Northern Lord raised an eyebrow. Easy to say, he murmured. Jon's hands tightened on the table edge. He felt the other word rise unbidden, the old command that could still a haul. Hold. He forced himself to draw breath instead, deep and steady, feeling it press against the inside of his ribs. Vezov. Davos watched him, eyes narrowing slightly. Davos had seen Jon die. Davos had seen him wake. Davos watched everything now, like a man who didn't trust miracles. We need a plan that assumes we lose, Davos said quietly. Tormund scoffed. That's a shit plan. Davos ignored him. Ramsay wants us to charge, Davos continued. So we don't. We form a line. We keep our archers ready. We let him come to us. Jon nodded. We hold, he said again, but this time he meant it in the common tongue, meant it as strategy, not compulsion. Sansa's eyes flicked to him. If Rickon runs, she said, voice low. You don't go. Jon's throat tightened. He imagined Rickon, small and wild, running across a field with arrows behind him. He imagined himself standing still, letting his brother die. The thought was a knife. I can't promise that, Jon said honestly. Sansa's face hardened. Then you'll lose, she said. The Northern Lord shifted. Uncomfortable with family grief lay bare in a war tent. Brienne stood near the entrance, silent, watchful. Podrick hovered at her shoulder, eyes wide. Tormund leaned over the map, stabbing at it with a thick finger. We put the giant here, he said, enthusiastic. Smash the gate. Smash the men. Smash. Giants die too, the Northern Lord snapped. One's shadow shifted outside the tent, as if the giant had heard his name. The canvas trembled slightly when he moved. Jon spoke quietly. We use 1-1 only if we have to, he said. He's not a battering ram. He's a living man. Tormund's mouth twisted. He's a giant, he said, but there was affection in the complaint. Davos tapped the map. If Ramsay's cavalry circles, he said, we're trapped. We need room behind us to fall back. Sansa stared at the line marking Winterfell's walls. We can't fall back forever, she said. Jon's gaze followed hers. He felt the tug of the castle again, the ache of what it had been. He wanted it back so badly his teeth hurt. And beneath that want, a colder understanding, wanting did not win battles. What about the Vale? Davos asked suddenly, looking at Sansa. I've heard. Sansa's eyes flickered. Her expression shifted too quickly to be nothing. The Vale won't come, she said sharply. Jon frowned. What are you talking about? Sansa's jaw tightened. Nothing, she said. We don't have time for fairy tales. Jon stared at her, suspicion stirring. Sansa met his gaze, stubborn and closed. He saw in her face a door locked from the inside. Before he could press, a horn sounded outside, the signal of a rider approaching. A man burst into the tent, breath steaming, face flushed with urgency. He held a letter. It came from Winterfell, the man said, voice shaking. A message from Ramsay Bolton. Jon's stomach clenched. He took the letter, broke the seal, and read. The words were foul, the threats detailed. Ramsay's cruelty dripped from the parchment like blood. He promised to feed Sansa to his dogs. He promised to flay Jon. He promised to cut Rickon into pieces and send them one by one. Jon's vision blurred with rage. He heard his own breath hitch. He felt heat surge up his throat. The other language pressed against his teeth, hungry. Sovis, it whispered in his mind. Listen. Jon closed his eyes for a heartbeat and forced himself to breathe. Vezov, deep, controlled. He felt the tense air, thick with smoke and fear. He felt the weight of eyes on him. When he opened his eyes, he handed the letter to Sansa. She read it. Her face went still, as if she had turned to stone. When she finished, she folded it carefully and set it on the table as if it were a dead thing. He wants you angry, Sansa said quietly. Jon's fists clenched. He has my brother, Jon said, voice rough. Sansa's eyes met his. And he knows you, she said. He knows you'll run. Jon's jaw tightened until it hurt. He stared at the map until the line swam. Davos spoke softly, as if coaxing an animal not to bolt. "We can win," he said, "but we win by not doing what he wants." Jon drew breath again, deeper until the rage in him to share space with air. He felt the discipline settle like a hand on his spine. Vezov. He looked at the men in the tent. He looked at Sansa. He looked at the shadow of one outside, patient and trusting. "I won't run," Jon said, and he did not know if it was truth or promise. Tormund grunted. "Good," he said, "because if you run, I'll tackle you myself." A few men laughed, thinly. Brienne's gaze lingered on Jon, as if measuring him. "Honor can be a weakness," she said quietly, not accusing, simply warning. Jon nodded once, grim. "I know," he said. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the smell of Winterfell's stone and smoke. The Bolton banners snapped, loud as whips. Night pressed in. The men sharpened blades by firelight, murmuring prayers to gods that did not always answer. Jon sat alone later, just outside his tent, watching sparks drift upward. Ghost lay beside him, head on his paws, eyes open. Jon whispered the calming words Aemon had insisted he learn first. Not the commands but the cautions, the phrases that meant steady, quiet, safe. The fire listened. It leaned. It did not obey exactly. Fire never obeyed, but it paid attention. Jon shut his eyes, feeling the wrongness of it and the necessity both. Tomorrow men would die. Tomorrow a bastard who had been dead would have to lead the living. The morning of battle tasted like rust. A thin sun struggled behind clouds, casting no warmth. The ground was a churned mix of snow and frozen mud, slick under boots. Men stood in lines, breath steaming, hands tight on spear shafts. Faces were pale and set. Some prayed, some stared ahead as if prayer were already spent. Jon rode to the front with Longclaw at his side, the wolf-head pommel cold beneath his glove. He looked down the line. Wildlings with mismatched weapons, Mormont men in bare furs, a scattering of other Northmen. Not enough. Never enough. Across the field, Winterfell's gates remained closed. Bolton banners snapped. Ramsay's men stood in tight formation, disciplined, armored. Cavalry waited on the flanks, horses stamping, impatient. A gate creaked. A figure emerged from Winterfell. Rickon Stark ran. He was small on the vast field, a dark shape against pale ground, legs pumping, hair streaming. Even from this distance Jon could see his mouth open, could imagine the desperate shout of his name. Jon's heart lurched. The world narrowed until there was only that boy running toward him. Ramsay Bolton stepped out behind Rickon, bow in hand, calm as a man shooting at crows. Sansa's voice echoed in Jon's mind. "You don't go." Jon's hands tightened on his reins until his knuckles ached. His entire body screamed to move. He had spent his life being denied the right to protect his family. Here it was offered and poisoned. Rickon ran, stumbling once, catching himself. Ramsay drew his bow. Jon's breath hitched. Something in him snapped. He spurred his horse. The world erupted. Men shouted behind him, but their voices sounded distant. Jon rode hard, snow and mud flying. The field rushed at him. Rickon grew larger with every heartbeat. Ramsay loosed an arrow. It hissed past Rickon's ear. Rickon flinched, nearly fell, kept running. Jon's mouth opened. A word surged up, the old command, sharp and instinctive. "Hida, hold." He did not know who he was trying to command. Rickon? Ramsay? The arrow? The world? The word died in his throat, strangled by disbelief. Ramsay drew again, smooth, loosed. The arrow struck Rickon in the back. Rickon's body jerked. His arms flailed. He fell forward into the snow, face down, sliding a little as momentum bled away. Then he lay still. Jon's scream tore out of him, raw and animal. He leapt from his horse, landing hard in mud, slipping, catching himself. He ran to Rickon, dropping to his knees. The boy's eyes were open, staring at nothing. Blood darkened the snow beneath him. "Rickon," Jon choked. No answer. Behind Jon, the Bolton line began to move. Cavalry thundered forward, hoofs shaking the ground. Ramsay's trap snapped shut. Jon stood, slow, staggering, long claw in his hand. He faced the oncoming wall of horses alone, his cloak whipping in the wind. For a heartbeat, everything went silent in his mind. Then survival roared back in. He raised Longclaw not in hope, but in defiance. The cavalry hit. Men crashed into one another. Horses screamed. The world became iron and breath and mud. Jon was shoved back, nearly trampled. He slashed at a horse's leg, felt warm blood spray. He ducked under a swinging sword, struck back, his arms moving on trained instinct while his mind still stared at Rickon's dead eyes. Wildlings collided with Bolton men, screaming. Tormund Giant's Bane bellowed and swung his axe, splitting a helmet, then another. One charged, roaring, his massive fists smashing men aside like dolls. Arrows rained down, biting into flesh, into snow, into the air. Jon fought, pulling breath in sharp, controlled pulls, because the moment he lost breath he would lose himself. Vezov, in strike, move, survive. Ramsay's men fell back in measured steps, drawing Jon's forces into the center. Bolton cavalry swept around the flanks, closing in like jaws. "Back!" Davos shouted somewhere, voice strained. "Back! Form up!" But panic had its own momentum. Men pressed forward, chasing. The wildlings surged, hungry for blood. Northmen followed, shouting. The line broke. Jon saw it happening and felt dread coil in his gut. Hold, the other part of him whispered. One word, and maybe. He sucked in breath. The cold burned. His throat tightened, the old syllable pressing against his teeth like a blade's edge. "Gita!" Jon shouted. The word cracked through the chaos, sharp as a whip. For a heartbeat, men faltered. Not all, not like puppets, but enough that the surge of bodies slowed, the desperate push forward stuttered. A few men turned their heads, confused, as if they'd heard their own names called in a crowded hall. A wildling mid-charge hesitated, eyes widening, then looked back at Jon as if waiting for the next command. Jon's stomach clenched with horror at himself. He hadn't meant to. He'd meant to shout in the common tongue. He didn't know what he'd meant, but the space that hesitation created saved lives. Just for a breath. Just long enough for Davos's shouted orders to cut through. "Form a line," Davos roared. "Shields up." Men stumbled into position, rough, imperfect, but something. Brienne drove a sword into a man's chest and shoved her way through bodies, trying to reach Jon. Tormund grabbed a wildling by the fur and yanked him back into line, snarling curses. One bellowed and planted his feet, swinging his club in a wide arc that cleared space in front of the forming shield wall. Ramsay's men advanced, disciplined, pressing. They fired volleys into the crowd. Bodies fell, trampled, swallowed by mud. The air filled with screams. Jon fought his way back toward his men, breath rasping. He saw the Bolton shields rise in a curved line, closing in. They were being penned. Sansa watched from a ridge with a handful of men, face white. Brienne was below, trying to keep the line from collapsing. Podrick fought beside her, terrified but stubborn. Davos swung a sword with the grim competence of a man who had never wanted to be a warrior but became one anyway. Jon's throat burned. His voice was gone, but in the back of his mind, the other words still echoed, and he could not tell whether he hated it for saving them or feared it because it had. Winterfell's gates fell to their own weight. When the last Bolton men fled inside and the Vale Knights surged after, the castle's yard became a slaughter pen. Men died screaming against familiar stone. Blood turned snow to slush. The air stank of iron and horse sweat and smoke. Jon moved through it like a man half asleep. His body was bruised, his arms trembling from effort. Every breath scraped his throat. The victory felt unreal, not because it was sweet, but because sweetness did not belong in him anymore. They found Ramsay Bolton in the Great Hall, trying to flee like a cornered fox. His eyes were bright with fury. He snarled like an animal as men dragged him down. Jon's fist connected with Ramsay's face once, twice, again and again until his knuckles split and blood spattered the floor. Every punch was for Rickon, for Sansa, for the North, for the knives at Castle Black, for everything that had been taken. Ramsay's mouth turned into pulp. Still he laughed, choking on blood, and the sound made Jon want to kill him with his hands. But he didn't. He stopped. He forced himself to breathe. Vezov. He stepped back, shaking, and let the men bind Ramsay's wrists. They dragged him into the courtyard, toward the kennels where the hounds were kept. The dogs barked, frantic, smelling blood, smelling their master's fear. Sansa walked with them, silent. Jon watched her as she approached Ramsay. She moved like a blade, smooth, controlled. The anger inside her honed into something cold. Ramsay lifted his swollen face, eyes gleaming even through bruises. "My love," he croaked, voice thick with blood. "You came home." Sansa stared at him without blinking. "I did," she said. Ramsay's smile was broken, but still a smile. "You can't kill me," he said, voice slurring. "I'm part of you now." Jon's stomach twisted. He stepped forward, anger flaring. "Enough," Jon growled. Sansa's hand lifted slightly, stopping him. She did not look away from Ramsay. "You said your dogs were loyal," she said softly. Ramsay's eyes narrowed, confusion flickering. "They are," he rasped. Sansa's mouth curved, faint and terrible. "They haven't been fed," she said. The kennel door opened. The hounds surged out, lean and hungry, eyes wild. For a heartbeat they hesitated, sensing the change. Their master bound, helpless. Then hunger won. They leapt. Ramsay screamed. The sound was high and shocked. The sound of a man discovering his own pain is not entertaining when it belongs to him. Dogs tore at him, snapping, snarling. Blood sprayed. Men stepped back, faces pale. Jon's fists clenched, nails biting into his palms. Sansa watched without flinching. Brienne stood a few paces away, posture rigid, eyes unreadable. Davos looked away, jaw clenched, as if he'd seen enough horrors in his life. Tormund grinned, feral. Then his grin faded when he saw Sansa's face. Ghost stood near Jon's boot, ears forward, eyes fixed on the writhing chaos. The dire wolf did not growl. He simply watched, as if recognizing a predator being eaten by predators. Ramsay's screams turned to gurgling. The dog's snarls filled the yard. Snow began to fall, soft, indifferent, landing on blood and fur and broken shields. It melted on warm flesh, clung to cold stone. When it was done, Sansa turned away, her face calm as if she'd just watched a man hang, not be torn apart. Jon stared at her, heart heavy. "Sansa," he began. She looked at him then, and for a moment Jon saw something like emptiness in her eyes too, an absence where softness had been. "He deserved it," she said. Jon swallowed. "Yes," he admitted. Sansa's gaze held his. "And I needed it," she added, voice quiet. Jon's throat tightened. He wanted to tell her she shouldn't need it. He wanted to tell her the world should never have demanded that of her. He wanted to tell her revenge did not heal, that it only fed itself. But he could not, because he knew in his own bones that he had needed to hit Ramsay too. He had needed to see the bastard bleed. He had felt something inside him unclench with every punch. They stood in the falling snow, surrounded by corpses and banners, and Jon realized victory had not made them pure again. It had only made them alive. That night, Winterfell's halls filled with voices again.
Men celebrating, men mourning, men drinking to forget.
Fires burned in hearths, chasing the cold from stone. The castle felt haunted, but it felt inhabited. Jon wandered away from the noise and found the crypts. He descended the steps into darkness where the air was colder. Still, torches burned in brackets, their flames steady, as if the stone protected them from wind. The statues of Starks lined the corridor, stone faces stern, swords laid across laps. Ned Stark sat among them, carved in cold granite, his eyes forever forward. Jon stopped in front of him. He stared at the statue's face, trying to see his father's expression beneath the stone. He remembered Ned's voice, quiet and firm. He remembered the way Ned had looked at him sometimes, an unreadable shadow in his eyes. "I failed him," Jon whispered, not sure if he meant Rickon or Ned or the boy he used to be. The torch flame beside him flickered slightly. Jon's breath caught. He turned his head slowly toward it. The flame leaned toward him as if curious. He felt the other language rise, subtle as smoke. "Sovis," it whispered. "Listen." Jon swallowed, heart pounding. He had spoken that word in the yard as he died. He had spoken it as he woke. He had shouted hold in battle and felt men falter. He stared at the flame and felt, faintly, that vibration again, like a distant wing beat. He had been pretending it was imagination. Now, deep beneath Winterfell, surrounded by dead kings and silent stone, he could not pretend. Jon leaned closer to the torch. He whispered, barely audible. "Sovis," he said. The flame flared, not with wind, not with draft. It rose straight up, brightening, as if fed by something unseen. Jon's skin prickled. He felt heat on his face. He felt, beneath it, the faintest impression of something answering far away, a presence turning its head in a warm land. He staggered back, breath ragged. He forced himself to breathe slow, to steady. "Vezov, in..." He stared at the torch until it settled, pretending it had done nothing strange. In the silence of the crypts, Jon heard his own heartbeat. He realized then that the world had not just brought him back. It had marked him. The raven came 2 days later, when the snow had settled into dirty drifts and the corpses had been burned in the yard. Jon was in the great hall, listening to men argue about stores and repairs, when a steward rushed in, breathless, a black-feathered bird in his hands. "A raven," the steward said, "from the south." Jon's stomach tightened. He took the message, broke the seal, and unrolled the parchment. The handwriting was neat. The tone was careful. The name at the bottom made the hall tilt. Tyrion Lannister. Jon read once, then again, as if repetition might change the meaning. The letter spoke of a queen at Dragonstone, Daenerys Targaryen, returned to Westeros. It spoke of her claim, her dragons, her allies. It asked Jon Snow to come. It offered an alliance, or at least a conversation. It mentioned the threat in the north as if it were a rumor, and yet the words felt pointed, as though someone had whispered something into Tyrion's ear. Jon's hands tightened on the parchment until it creased. Sansa watched him from across the hall, eyes narrowed. When the meeting ended, she followed him out without speaking, her silence sharp as accusation. They climbed to the battlements after dark, away from ears. Wind tore at their cloaks. Torches burned along the walls, flames leaning with the gusts. Below, the courtyard was a churn of men and horses, rebuilding, mending, pretending peace existed. Jon held the parchment against the wind, reading again by torchlight. Sansa stood beside him, fur cloak wrapped tight, hair whipped across her cheek. "Who wrote it?" she demanded. Jon did not look up. "Tyrion Lannister," he said. Sansa's mouth tightened. "The imp?" she said, voice thick with old hatred. "What does he want?" Jon swallowed. "He wants me to come to Dragonstone," he said. "He wants to meet." Sansa's eyes flashed. "And why would you go?" she snapped. "We just won. We just..." She gestured at the castle beneath them, at the work being done, at the fragile rebuilding. "You're needed here." Jon's jaw clenched. "The dead are still coming," he said quietly. Sansa's expression faltered for a heartbeat, then hardened. "So are armies," she said. "So are threats we can see." Jon looked at her then, really looked. "You don't trust her," he said. Sansa's laugh was bitter. "I don't trust anyone who comes with fire and a crown," she said. Targaryens burned our grandfather alive. They put our uncle in chains. Her voice broke, then sharpened again. They are not saviors. Davos stood a few paces away, hands clasped, listening. He shifted, clearing his throat gently. Lady Sansa, he said, careful. Dragons might be useful against. Sansa cut him off with a glare. Davos fell silent, but his eyes remained steady. Brienne stood near the battlement stairs, scanning the courtyard, but Jon knew she was listening too. Ghost lay at Jon's feet, tail curled, eyes bright in torchlight. Jon stared at the parchment until the ink blurred. He thought of the faint vibration in his bones. He thought of the torch in the crypts flaring when he whispered, listen. He thought of the dragons, far away, and the way Regal had lifted his head in his mind as if hearing something across the world. He did not want to go south. He did not want to walk into another Game of Thrones, another nest of lies. He wanted to stay here to build, to prepare the North for winter. But he had learned at the Wall that wanting meant nothing. If she has dragons, Jon said slowly, she might believe she can take the Iron Throne with fire. If she does, the realm will burn. And while they burn, the dead will come. He looked at Sansa. We need her. Sansa's face twisted. We need ourselves, she said. Jon's voice softened, though the wind tried to tear it away. We don't have enough, he said. Not against what's coming. Sansa stared at him, eyes bright, jaw clenched. For a moment Jon thought she would refuse, would fight him the way she fought everything now. Then she said quietly, you'll bend the knee. It was not a question. It was an accusation shaped like prophecy. Jon's stomach tightened. No, he said, and meant it. Sansa's gaze held his. You always say no, she said. And then the world makes you anyway. Jon had no answer. The world had made him die. The world had made him live. The world had made him lead. It had made him speak a language that made fire lean closer. Davos stepped closer, voice low. If you go, he said. I go. Jon nodded. You will, he said, because Davos was the only thing close to a steady anchor he had left. Brienne spoke from near the stairs. I will not leave Lady Sansa, she said. Sansa's gaze flicked to Brienne, then back to Jon. If you go, she said, voice cold. You go as king in the north. Jon flinched. I'm not a king, he said. Sansa's eyes narrowed. They'll make you one, she said. The wind howled louder, as if mocking them. Jon looked out over the dark land, the snowfields stretching into blackness. Somewhere beyond that darkness was the sea. Somewhere beyond that, Dragonstone and a queen with dragons. He felt the satchel against his ribs, the folio inside like a secret heart. He drew breath deep and steady and tasted cold air like iron. I'll go, Jon said. Sansa's face went still. And if she demands you kneel? She asked, voice tight. Jon stared at the horizon. Then I'll do what I have to, he said, and the ambiguity in his own words frightened him. Ghost rose, pressing his head against Jon's leg. Jon rested a hand on the direwolf's fur, grounding himself. Far away, in a place of black stone and crashing waves, Daenerys Targaryen stood on Dragonstone's cliffs with the wind whipping her silver hair. The sea below was a dark, endless mouth. Her dragons shifted behind her, restless. Regal lifted his head suddenly, eyes narrowing, nostrils flaring as if tasting the air. He made a low sound, not quite a roar, not quite a question. Daenerys turned toward him, frowning. What is it? She murmured in Old Valyrian. Regal stared north, toward a horizon of nothing, toward a cold land he had never seen. Daenerys followed his gaze, unease tightening her chest. The wind smelled of salt and stone, carried no message she could name, and yet Regal listened, head raised, as if waiting for a voice that was not hers. On Winterfell's battlements, Jon Snow stood with a letter in his hand and a decision made, and the cold wind pressed against his throat as if trying to pull words out of him. He did not speak, but somewhere in the distance, fire paid attention.